Policy Brunch, Commerce, presented with the generous support from Crypto.com and Block. Now, I'm Philip Dunn, the program with USBC, and I want to thank you all in advance for attending on today. Now, the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. is committed to protecting the economic well-being and prosperity of Black-owned businesses that we have at USBC and the businesses that we represent. Our annual USBC Policy Brunch provides a platform to join us in dialogue about issues, communities, and Black business. Now, this year's Policy Brunch will feature panel discussions on cryptocurrency, commerce, policy agenda, and we will take a deeper dive into the BLACKprint, which is USBC's position issues impacting Black businesses. Arena we'll also hear their insights on digital currency. We'll talk about the importance of being a crypto merchant, and we'll talk important to have policy successes within their spheres of influence, just to make sure that they're instrumental for Black business. To take notes and then to take action to help us strengthen USBC's position on impacting Black. Now, and with our first speaker, we would like to introduce our president, Ron Busby. Now, our next speaker, Ron Busby, he's a tireless advocate and servant. A successful business owner himself, he has been recognized as one of the nation's best CEOs. And I can attest to that. His revenue in only quite impressive. In addition to being an entrepreneur, Ron was a former local chamber leader, serving as the chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ron Busby Senior.
Here. But thank you for being here. I know this is a long week, a lot of activities, and we try to start the week off by what's happening in reference to the crypto. I'm like many Black people. I don't understand it. I know it's coming. And for us as business, for some of our members, as well as some of our corporate partners to have this conversation. Secondly, I want to acknowledge three organizations. We have the PRISM Group, and I know Olivia Nutter here. Olivia, thank you. Our newest member to the team, Nigel Stevens from the Phoenix Strategies Group. And then the third, many of you have heard about the group, Art Collins. So now we have three different groups representing our interests on policy on Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., as well as around the country. Secondly, I want to make sure that I acknowledge our corporate partners. You heard a little bit about them earlier, but I want to give a shout out to Block and to Crypto and my good friend. I think I saw him in here. If not, I'll make sure I acknowledge him when he walks in the room. So our policy breakfast, again, is about providing a platform for governmental affairs professionals, chamber leaders, and business owners to join us in dialogue about issues affecting Black communities, Black businesses during one of the most important weeks of the year, CBC. As we join in person this year, our annual legislative conference, U.S. Black Chamber remains committed to providing a platform for conversation that will move the paradigm for Black wealth and success forward. It's by no accident that we're choosing to engage in dialogue about digital currency and the significance of public policy focused on the crypto market. We are three things: intentional, transparent, and accountable. And that's what we hold all of our policy as well as corporate partners to those same. We're intentionally supporting Black entrepreneurs and investors alike to create and expand pathways to economic success for the Black global community. And in the spirit of creating and expanding these economic opportunities, I'd like to highlight the USBC's 2022 BLACKprint. We published the first BLACKprint in 2018 in the middle of the last administration. I know. Our initial focus features a detailed policy agenda that made the case for lawmakers to move the needle on policies that strengthen the Black community and, by way of help, Black America thrive in the progress. The BLACKprint provides a telescope which through policymakers can view the critical needs of our businesses. The publication is separated by several principles based on the USBC's 5 pillars, which are about advocacy, access to capital, contracting, entrepreneurial training, and chamber development. In the 4 years since our first version, we've seen incredible setbacks as Black America grappled with the dual crises, including the acute damages of the global pandemic and the slow reckoning of systemic injustices. We still face these challenges in many ways today. However, our community continues to recover, grow, and seek opportunities of entrepreneurship. Black-owned firms continue to strive for economic recovery and resilience amidst new developments in the COVID-19 pandemic, including the variants, treatments, and vaccines, and the other disparities between Black-owned firms and other firms. In addition to these disparities is a lack of federal aid that our business community faced during these turbulent times. We heard the number 41%. Over 440,000 Black-owned businesses closed during the first 3 months of the pandemic because of policy gaps and the lack of intentionality from the federal government. And you guys have heard me talk about this in great length over the last couple of years. Our recent data makes it clear, despite unending barriers, that Black firms are resilient. So many people talked about the number of businesses closed, but they did not talk about the resiliency that we had. If you ask our businesses, which we did, we surveyed, 70% of them said that if they'd had the right information, they would never have had to close. But what you also hear is that 72% of them reopened one time, 18% opened the second time, and 10% opened the third time, which means to us, with a little bit of funding, those firms would have never had to have closed in the first place. And so access to capital is extremely important for our businesses. I'm going to skip a few, talk about the 2021 and 22 year in review. Some of our successes. This morning, we're going to be joined by Stacy Plaskett from the U.S. Virgin Islands and Donald Cravens, my good friend from the U.S. Department of Commerce, Undersecretary of the Minority Business Development Agency. We will continue into the afternoon with a full agenda of dynamic policymakers with Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey and Congressman Emanuel Clever of the 5th Congressional District of Missouri. But first, I'd like to highlight the key work that we've been able to achieve over the past year alone. As I recently mentioned, the USBC has 5 critical pillars. The first one is advocacy. Over the last year, we've made tremendous progress. I want to give a shout out to Red Butler as he walks out the back door so much for the support over the year, especially with the administration in the White House. Thank you so much. Good deal. Earlier this summer, the USBC hosted the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, during our national conference, where the Secretary went on record saying he will provide and make a priority the advancement of Black firms in the infrastructure contracting. We've been a critical stakeholder and partner in the Biden administration, helping to push equity in the American Rescue Plan Act, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which all provided incredible relief for Black business owners and their families. We are especially proud to have worked with other leaders in the entrepreneurship advocacy space to ensure that the MBDA was made permanent as an agency for the first time in its history. We are also pleased to see that a true champion of the Black businesses, Undersecretary Don Cravens Jr., has been installed as MBDA's leader. This is in something that we've advocated tirelessly to achieve, and we look forward to great work with MBDA under his leadership. The USBC has provided comment on various regulatory efforts, many of which took on our concerns into account upon release of the final rule. A few examples, and thank you again. Section 1071 of the Dodd-Frank Act required demographic data for small business loans. Again, there was really no information being shared with us about who was getting the loans and who weren't, which Black firms were being awarded opportunities versus non-Black firms. We also talked about the SBA requirements to provide past performance ratings to Black contractors. Never happened before. The Community Reinvestment Act, final rule in the making, but USBC was recently asked to provide feedback to policymakers on ongoing regulations and Chairman Waters' legislation addressing banking discrimination. We maintain a close working relationship with the House and the Senate. We are called upon and trusted partners to policymakers seeking to prioritize access to capital and opportunities for Black firms. Our second pillar is around access to capital, which is one of the foremost challenges impacting Black business owners. You will be excited to hear that the U.S. Black Chamber is creating the first and only Black-owned portal supporting our Black-owned banks. Many of you know that Black banks received a tremendous amount of deposits over the last year from Treasury, from corporate America, even some of the sports teams. But I've always said banks don't make money when you make deposits. Banks make money when we make loans. And so it is our effort to make sure that the Black banks know Black businesses. Our members are saying that they want capital. Our banks are saying they have capital. It is going to be upon the U.S. Black Chamber to create a portal that's free of charge for our members to access those lines of credit through the Black banks, saving our businesses while at the same time saving our banks. Never been done before, but you will see it happen in 2023. But there are some other things that we've done. We gave out $500,000 in grants this year alone through the Community Navigator program. And we gave out $276,000 to Black businesses at our national conference. And we're continuing to fight to make sure that programs like Payroll Protection Plan take into account the needs of Black-owned businesses. Contracting is our third pillar. And I'm really excited. I know I've seen some of the team here from the Buy Black group. I know Alicia, are you in the room? There you go. Thank you so much for what you're doing, because for the first time, you see, corporate America always will tell me, Ron, we'd love to do more business with Black firms if we could find them. And so we've taken that barrier away from corporate America by providing a list of Black-owned banks through the USBC's directory, and now through certification through the USBC Buy Black platform. You can now be certified as a Black-owned business as opposed to being certified as a minority-owned business. First time ever that this country has been able to do that. And so for that, we are extremely proud. We also signed an MOU with Puerto Rico. Many of you have seen what's happening, the devastation in Puerto Rico right now as we speak, but the U.S. Black Chamber before this saw the opportunity to partner with them on the opportunity as well as their access to capital needs. And so we are working with them to make sure that they have resiliency and come back. We've been fighting for a long legislation on the National Defense Authorization, also known as NDAA, to improve opportunities for 8A firms. It makes no sense to own business. The largest contract you can have as a sole source award is $4 million. When they're giving out contracts in the trillions of dollars, you cannot build a bridge or a freeway or a hospital or any of these infrastructure opportunities at a maximum of $4 million. And so the U.S. Black Chamber is fighting to increase the size of the contracts as well as the amount of time that you can be in the 8A program. Currently, it's 8 years. We've extended it to 9 years, and we're looking to get that increased to 10 years. And so through our help, we'll be able to do that. And we're going to be asking you to support us as well. USBC has also worked closely with the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship on crafting the Federal Contracting Fairness Act a significant piece of legislation to improve the 8A program, extending the life cycle, expanding the sole source opportunities, providing more efficiency and timely technical assistance, and incentivize greater participation in the 8A mentor protege program. Our fourth pillar is around entrepreneurial training. When our businesses closed, they said that the reason that they closed was lack of information. And so the U.S. Black Chambers and our program department put on, free of charge each month on average, 18 free webinar seminars. Through our Navigator program, we've had over 334 counseling sessions. The training demographics revealed 4,891 firms trained since the start of the program, exceeding our goal for the year of 2000. So we've already almost 2.5 times increased what we were asked to do. You also saw that in 2020, the President of the United States went to Tulsa, Oklahoma to talk about the disparities. He went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and while he was there, he made a comment and made statements in front of our historic site, which now the U.S. Black Chamber has a women's business center in Tulsa, first time ever. We're extremely proud of what they're doing. The women business owners, both minority and majority, are taking advantage of the technical assistance and opportunities that we're providing. And our last pillar is around chamber development. Just recently, we had our national conference event hosted here in Washington, D.C. at the Black-owned Marriott Marquis, where our businesses were able to talk directly with chamber about best practices, developing opportunities. We had some of our chamber leaders like Tony Gadney visit us, and it has made a world of difference for him. In reference to our chamber presidents, we also had the opportunity to talk to Crystal Broomfield, a good friend of ours who's now leading General Services, also known as GSA, to discuss federal contracting initiatives and efforts. USBC has provided members with opportunities to hear from Mark Madrid, who's running the Navigator program, and provided relationships for us. We're extremely honored that you guys are here with us this morning, because I know it's going to be a full week, but I'm really proud of the work and the effort that the U.S. Black Chamber has done. I'd like to do a couple things before I get off. I want my board of directors to kind of stand up. For those of you that have not met them, please. This is Charles O'Neill. He's our chairman of the board. Amy Griffin was one of our original board members. She's our vice chair, also previous chairman of the DC Chamber of Commerce, and Kalisha Garrett, who's now running the Louisiana African American Foundation. Thank you so much for all of you guys are doing. Stay around for a lot of good information. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that very informative piece of information, Ron, about our chamber. Next up, our opening remarks will be provided by none other than Representative Stacy Plaskett. Congresswoman Stacey E. Plaskett represents the United States Virgin Islands at large congressional district here in the United States House of Representatives. Congresswoman Plaskett currently serves on the House Ways and Means Committee, the House Budget Committee, and the House Committee on Agriculture, where she serves as the chair of the subcommittee on biotechnology, horticulture, and research. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm really happy to be here with you all for this breakfast, for the U.S. Chamber Inc.'s policy breakfast. Mr. Busby, I commend your team and to the commitment that you all have made to visionary leadership and advocacy on behalf of Black economic empowerment. With your diligence, hard work, late nights and early mornings, and without that, many growing Black enterprises would certainly face a tougher road. I wanted to talk with you about some topics that my office and members of my team have been working on. In recent years, cryptocurrency has generated a great deal of momentum and discussion among financial institutions and the wider public, and most recently with policymakers. We're usually a little behind everybody else, but we're getting there. About 16% of adult Americans, that's 40 million people, have either invested in, traded, or used cryptocurrency. Though the first cryptocurrency was only created 13 years ago, the reach and value of these digital currencies have exploded. You all know that by 2026, the global blockchain market value will reach about $67 billion. I think that's probably a small estimate, and we're going to see it exponentially grow from that. While the future of cryptocurrency is still largely uncertain, its underlying technology, blockchain, has a growing number of applications that have the possibility to transform significant facets of our lives, including how we buy and sell and verify transactions. I happen to be the first woman of color to join the caucus on blockchain in Congress. I can recall going to my staff about 6 years ago, and I went to the staff assistants, the youngest members of the team, because I figured they would know better than everybody else. And I was like, blockchain, what do you know about blockchain? And they even didn't really understand it that much. And I requested of my legislative director at the time, look up any legislation that's on blockchain. And interestingly, the members who had legislation on blockchain were wealthy white men who had been millionaires in the technology space or the financial sector before coming to Congress. They were the authors of blockchain and cryptocurrency legislation 6 years ago. I immediately said, co-sponsor me on all of that. Find out if there's a caucus. I need to be there. We need to understand that, because Black people are going to be way behind everybody else in learning and understanding how it applies to us and how we can benefit from it. Much of the appeal of digital assets stem from 3 features: lower commissions, increased efficiency, and of course, the anonymity of transactions. As a result, many industries have begun exploring ways to adopt digital assets. And despite cryptocurrency's advantages and increased prevalence, we should not overlook the risks posed to consumers and investors, particularly in my thought, young Black people who are engaged in this as a trade. Cryptocurrency, like many assets, do come with some risk, as demonstrated by its volatile market fluctuations. As a case in point, the global market capitalization of cryptocurrency is currently about 1/3 of last year's peak of $33 trillion. This sharp market decline is particularly concerning when we consider most widely traded digital assets like Bitcoin and Ether are considered commodities. That's where I come in, on the Agriculture Committee of all places, where we look at commodities, where I sit on the Commodities Subcommittee. These commodities have been largely bought and sold on trading platforms that are not subject to federal regulations. Let me be clear here. I am a member who does not believe in a lot of regulations. I'm a moderate, some would say conservative Democrat, and I think what's more important is to create sandboxes where there can be oversight, particularly in new markets, new areas, new digital assets, to allow the market and the business sector to be able to develop and grow it without, let me say, the facility, and not facility as in a place, but simplicity of policymakers thinking about what should and should not be done. We, as policymakers, are often, reading 6th grade books on subjects where it is reading college level material. And so us regulating, I think, is often a misnomer. Oversight and guardrails, and be able to have places where individuals who want to be engaged in the market are not taken advantage of, and have strict transparency about what's happening to allow them to be able to grow their businesses. Commodities have been largely bought and sold. Unbeknownst to most, market regulators presently lack the authority necessary to adequately protect the public against market manipulation. Consequently, these digital markets lack the transparency and fairness that Americans expect and deserve when they engage in crypto trading and other asset-related activities. So to address these vulnerabilities, last week, I co-led the introduction of legislation, which is the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act of 2022, with my colleagues on the House Subcommittee on Commodities Exchanges, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. This is the House companion to legislation that's already been put forward in the Senate, the Stabenow-Boozman bill, same name, that was introduced in the Senate Agriculture Committee in August. This bill would give the CFTC the authority to regulate digital assets that act as commodities, such as Bitcoin and Ether, and the marketplaces in which they trade. Other provisions of the bill require digital commodity platforms to prohibit abusive trading practices, eliminate or reveal conflict of interest, sustain sufficient financial resources, manage strong cybersecurity programs, protect customer assets, and report suspicious transactions. In addition, Congressman Austin Scott, a Republican member of the Agriculture Committee, he and I have introduced the Commodity Futures Trading Commission Research and Development Modernization Act. This bipartisan bill directs the Commodities and Future Trading Commission, the CFTC, to establish and maintain research, development, demonstration, and information programs regarding engaging technologies and their applications to the commodities market. If passed, that bill would ensure that our regulators have the necessary information to respond to risk effectively and efficiently. While we are making significant progress, there's a lot more that needs to be done. This is why your panel and having these discussions, getting information out, having this exchange is really important. Every voice matters. Members of Congress rely on the business sector, and particularly members like myself rely on a place like your organization to tell us what are the vulnerabilities to Black businessmen, what are the vulnerabilities to investors, to technology spaces where Black people are trying to engage in, where people of color and women are trying to step into. How are they being kept out? And how we, as members of Congress, having oversight and regulations, can make adoption transparencies to allow that to be taken. Now, that, of course, leads into recognizing the need to increase diversity in the fintech industry. Diversity within fintech is vital in creating the products and services that form the modern world. Together, by supporting Black entrepreneurs, we can address the gender, cultural, and ethnic divisions in the financial services industry and keeps that industry from making more money. We know that innovation comes from those who have been left out. And so engaging more with people of color and Black entrepreneurs, as well as innovators and founders, will expand marketplace, particularly in the American sector. Most of the most prevalent issues for many Black investors involves funding. So glad that you talked about the banks and making loans and the larger banks. Expecting to be worth $324 billion by 2026, the global fintech sector has continued to encumber the progress of minority-owned firms. As a result, these firms are unable to reach the next level of growth or attract the intellectual capital needed to take on competitors. In addition to the lack of startup funding, we have seen that these minority-owned firms routinely face regulatory deterrents and receive limited support. Due to those trends, several months ago, I'm pleased to be the co-chair of a new caucus, the Congressional Caucus on Black Innovation. The other co-chairs of that caucus were very purposeful, and the committees that they and the locations where they were. Marilyn Strickland, member of Congress from Washington State, former mayor of Tacoma, Washington, is another co-chair of the caucus. Her engagement in the tech sector was important to be one of the co-chairs. And we're happy to have our young brother, Richie Torres, who represents New York City, the South Bronx, and sits on the Financial Services Committee to also be one of the co-chairs. Together, we believe, with me being on Ways and Means, being part of the Commodities Subcommittee on Ag, that we can together really support investors as well as innovators in the space in moving forward. We've had launches. During ALC, we're going to have panel discussions engaging both investment houses, Goldman Sachs and others, venture capital funds, private equity funds, creators, to have discussions about how to increase funding and support the sector. We know that last year in 2020, first quarter, only 1% of VC funding went to Black founders. We have got to put a stop to that. And as members of Congress, we are incredibly engaged in it. We've already had, joining our caucus after seeing the work that we're doing, Frank Pallone, who's the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and Richie Neal, chair of the Ways and Means Committee, have also joined the caucus. Our next stop after ALC is to go around the country to the places where we know innovation and the money is, go where the money resides, and be able to link those together, sitting from our perch, from our bully pulpit in Congress, to be able to make changes. The goal of our caucus is to provide comprehensive understanding of the opportunities and challenges associated with to further racial equity, to our nation's long-term viability and global competitiveness. America's competitiveness and our continual innovation can only have all involved. America is losing out, is the argument I've been making to my other members of Congress, by not engaging in Black founders, Black innovators, Black creators, Black money. We were it. I'm really grateful to be able to talk with you all because I know you understand. I know you all have been working in the trenches on this way before members of Congress were. And so this continual discussion is also really important. This was not necessarily in my notes, but I wanted to, of course, plug my own home, the US Virgin Islands. In 2017, we had 2 Category 5 hurricanes hit us. 2. We lost hospitals, schools, homes, vital infrastructure, as well as our utility grid. Our brothers and sisters next door in Puerto Rico, we're 150 million, 150,000, they're 3 million, right? So a lot of attention goes there. You didn't hear Virgin Islanders complain when we were without power for 6 months. We just do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. But behind the scenes, members of Congress were working, and we had a huge opportunity after, where Congress changed the law, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, to say that we will give you funding not to rebuild as things were at the time of the storm, but to rebuild with resiliency as they should have been built at the time of the storm. Which means for us, we have billions and billions of dollars to create microgrids, to create solar, new energy resources. We also have one of the deepest ports in the Caribbean and an exemption from the Jones Act, which no other place in the Caribbean that's a US port has. We're trying to capitalize on that. And I've been talking with Nigel about getting Black contractors. We do not have sufficient workers in the Virgin Islands to do this rebuilding. Our governor, a Black man, says, I want Black people doing this work. I want to entice Virgin Islanders to come back home to do this work. We need project managers, accountants, engineers, construction workers. We need Black businesses. We also are uniquely positioned because of our position. America doesn't buy us because of our beaches and our location. It's because of our geographic location of the Caribbean. Because of that, years, centuries ago, slave traders thought we were an incredible port to be used for the slave trade. After that, everybody knows St. Thomas is the home of Bluebeard, Blackbeard, Redbeard, all had their homes there. They had their homes there because of its geographic importance. Global Crossing also put their hub there. And so we have enormous broadband capacity in our islands. We have tax incentives at the federal level that allow businesses to be able to grow by receiving very low corporate tax, federal taxes. And so we're looking for Black businesses. We have way too many white VCs, private equity, money managers, family-owned office managers that are living there. We don't have the kinds of people that look like ourselves taking advantage of that. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, myself, my Chief of Staff, Angeline Jabbar, we're always looking to bring new Black businesses. Listen, I got 5 sons. I'm trying to bring more businesses there so they'll come back home so I can see my grandchildren, be engaged a little bit in what their wives do and don't do with my grandchildren. So we are open for business. Oh, are you too, sis?
You know that's right.
So we're open for business, and I want to thank the Chamber for the tremendous work that you all are doing, not just here in America, but abroad. Your reach extends globally, and I'm excited about it. So thank you all and have a wonderful week.
I want to thank Congresswoman Plaskett for her remarks and for her service in advancing the interest of our community and for her bravery in protecting our democracy. Okay. Next, do we have Cleve? Is Cleve here? Right. Some would say that the future of digital currency is here, and it's a lot more exciting than anyone could have ever imagined. Next, we have a very insightful and informative conversation with Cleve Mesidor. She's the Executive Director of the Blockchain Foundation on the future of digital currency. She also has an impact she feels on Black business from digital currency. Cleve Mesidor is the founder of the Clevolution, which is a blockchain consulting firm. Previously, she was an Obama presidential appointee, working as Director of Public Affairs for the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration. There, she was charged with promoting White House economic programs and national public-private partnerships to advance innovation and entrepreneurship. Her acumen in public policy stems from her tenure on Capitol Hill as Communications Director for U.S. Representatives Betty McCollum and Barbara Lee. Now, she also coordinated with Congressional leadership major legislative initiatives. She currently hosts a podcast and launched a speaker series on blockchain at Microsoft's Fifth Avenue flagship. Cleve earned a master's degree, a Master of Arts from Howard University. She started her career in broadcasting at CNN's Washington Bureau. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Cleve Mesidor to the stage. Now, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about how impressive your career has been. But for those of us who may not be familiar with digital currency, Web3, can you tell us about some of the fundamentals? Can you tell us what is blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Web3, and then differentiate those things?
Of course. Well, it's wonderful to be here. I want to thank the Black Chambers for convening this and for having this important conversation. I was thrilled to see Congresswoman Plaskett speak. She has been an early supporter and actually the first Black woman, the first CBC member on the Congressional Black Caucus. In 2019, I organized a delegation of women of color in blockchain to Washington, women from all over the country, and she was there in 2019 to receive us and support us. So I want to thank her for her leadership. And I want to acknowledge Kevin Harris, who could not be here from Crypto.com. He's in Florida and bracing for the storm. So before we open up the conversation, what is blockchain? What is cryptocurrency? What is Web3? So let's start with blockchain. Think of blockchain as technology that securely verifies information, facilitates the exchange of value without third parties. Let's go over that again. Blockchain is technology that securely verifies information. That is the distributed ledger you hear about. Facilitates the exchange of value. That's cryptocurrencies. Without third parties, that is decentralization. Now, cryptocurrencies, think of them as the light, beautiful and bright. So many different types of light, right? So that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, XRP, and all the others. What powers them, what powers light is electricity, right? Similarly, if we think of that analogy, blockchain is what powers cryptocurrencies, right? Just as electricity powers light, blockchain powers cryptocurrencies. Now imagine what a waste it would be if all we did with electricity was light. Now imagine all of the things we do with electricity that we don't even know about. That is the beauty of blockchain. That's why it's beyond a currency. That's why it's beyond, what's happening in finance or what's happening in Silicon Valley. Right? I love to say that crypto is owned by everyone and no one at the same time. Now, what is Web3? Right? So we just talked about blockchain, we just talked about cryptocurrency. Web3 is the third iteration of the web, right? We are right now in Web 2, right? Web 2 is, the web is very popular, right? The internet connects us globally. Most of you have 70-year-old relatives who use WhatsApp to spam you, but don't even know how to use the internet, right? So web's reimagining a better internet, right? Right now, we know globally people rely on the internet. So for me, it is, what is that next iteration of the web where we can solve some of the problems, data breaches, identity, stolen identity, spam, bots, all of these problems? How can we use machine learning, blockchain, smart contracts specifically? How can we actually facilitate more immersive experiences, the peer-to-peer experiences, so you're actually having authentic conversations? How can we enable microtransactions? So Web3 is imagining a much more effective web that meets your needs, where there is not central power like a Mark Zuckerberg that controls it, where no one sells your data, it is up to you. So as you can see, that is something that will take time, right? And that includes more than blockchain. It includes machine learning and artificial intelligence. But what you hear about most of the time with Web3 is a lot of hype, right? A lot of people talk about, oh my God, the metaverse. Well, you know what? If we did the metaverse as they describe it today, most of you would be left behind. So that's why you'll never hear me talk about the metaverse. Right now, what they're talking about is a country club for wealthy people and large brands. But a true metaverse is possible a decade from now if we actually take the time to do the steps, right? So if we look at it this way, one great thing to think about is these conversations, this room, whether there was 5 of you or 500 of you in this room, I'd be excited. Because in the 1990s, when we debated the internet, we didn't have these conversations. We didn't talk about inclusion, accessibility. And where are we today? A huge digital divide. We have an internet that used to be a marketplace that is owned by 4 wealthy males, and our data is stolen, our identity is stolen. So I'm excited about this conversation because, as you can see, crypto is not that sexy. It's really about efficiencies and optimization. Everything else is noise and hype.
And thank you for that. I wonder if you can expand on, you said it's not that sexy. What are some of the other common misperceptions of crypto, blockchain, and Web3?
Yes. So one of the misconceptions is that there are no Black people in crypto. Black and Latino communities lead national adoption of cryptocurrency. Let me repeat that. Black and Latino communities lead national adoption. There would not be an industry without Black and Latino people. Where did we get that data from? We got it from the Chicago North Poll. the Harvard Harris poll. We got it from the Pew Research Center, Schwab Investment, Ariel Investment. The data continues to show that in the US and globally, people who have been out of traditional finance are earliest adopters of this cryptocurrency. So while you may be sitting here thinking, well, I don't know it, the people I know don't know it, that's because you're part of a special class of people. But the people in your congressional district, the people back home, they own cryptocurrencies. They're holding cryptocurrencies. And the innovators across the nation, outside of Austin, California, New York, they are building products and services in crypto to actually solve inequities. The other misconception I would note is that people think crypto is not regulated. Crypto is regulated at the state level and at the federal level. What the Congresswoman was articulating is we have no idea what the regulatory framework is right now. Right? So we don't know, should we regulate like banks? Should we regulate it like we do the Wall Street? Right? Because those industries have been around for a long time and they're managed by rules from the 1930s. Right? So how can we apply those rules to a new financial instrument, a new marketplace, a new solutions and tools that's going to impact our future? So that's the debate, right? She mentioned the CFTC and Lab CFTC. Well, CFTC looks at it as commodities. Well, do you know right now, you have to pay your taxes on crypto. The IRS has a question on the tax form. But the IRS looks at cryptos as properties. CFTC looks at them as commodities. The SEC says all of them look like securities to them. While companies have to register at the state level, they have to comply with KYC and AML. What's not clear is, are they commodities? Are they property? Are they securities? Those questions, we need, as the Congresswoman said, a smart regulatory framework that puts in the rules of the road, but also makes sure that Black and Latino innovators can actually build and continue to innovate in this space.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm thinking about all of our business owners in the audience, and all of this, it can sound confusing, all the regulations and what have you. Can you tell us what some of the benefits and risks are of these new technologies?
Yes, I'll start with the risks, right? Because that's what we hear about all the time. First, all of you here in this room, you talk about wealth creation, generational wealth. Well, newsflash, you can't build wealth without risks. And obviously it should be pragmatic risks. We should take calculated risks. But it is impossible to go beyond the status quo and actually build wealth without taking risks. Second, to be an investor is to actually anticipate and plan for bear markets. Right now, everyone talks about crypto bear market, but they don't talk about the looming recession. They don't talk about the S&P, Dow, all down. So obviously there's risk because we want our communities not just to survive, but to thrive. But that means we have to invest in financial literacy. And that means we need Congress to focus on empowerment, not protectionism that looks like patriarchy. And what does empowerment mean? Empowerment means is next time you do the PPP loan program and you say it's for minority business and independent contractors, you change the system first. You tell the banks that they have a new framework to operate from, because all you did was create a PPP loan program that you said was for us, but ended up in the hands of hedge funds and wealthy businesses. That is what consumer protection and empowerment, the difference between consumer and protection and empowerment is. So absolutely there's risk. Absolutely we need to focus on education. I lead the Blockchain Foundation, which is for risk education. We're going to do a 6-city tour to go into El Paso, to go into Detroit, to go into, the Appalachian region, the Mississippi Delta. So yes, there's risk. Yes, we need to educate yourselves. And I would say that the other biggest risk is FOMO. Oh my God. This is the starting line. No one has missed anything. right now, people are like, oh my God, the price of Bitcoin. Fractionalization means you can buy $5 of Bitcoin. Our sponsors are Black and Crypto.com. On both of them, you could buy Bitcoin for $5. You haven't missed out. Do not listen to the noise and the hype, because the noise and the hype also tell you that crypto is a space for and by white males. And I've just told you the data doesn't show that. The hype tells you you need to buy as much as possible. That is not true. The hype tells you you've already missed out. That is not true either. We are at the starting line. We don't know what this is going to be yet. And each of you, the great thing about decentralization is ownership. Whether you're homeless or you're a millionaire, you can build on cryptocurrency. You can build on blockchain. You can leverage Web3.
Wow, it's very encouraging, because I felt like I missed out on a blockchain, so I'll definitely be investing a little bit more. Now, I want to go a little bit further. I wonder, for Black communities and Black businesses, can you share some of the best use cases for these technologies?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that, don't worry about the price of cryptocurrencies. Fractionalization means you can buy $10 of anything. So let's start putting layaway. But forget crypto. No, it truly is. One Bitcoin may be worth $20,000, but if you put $10 every month, you will accumulate. And our communities know that this is how we actually build wealth and accumulate the things we need. But the good news is, this industry that hit $3 trillion market share in this past spring, and obviously that has eroded a bit with the bear market. This industry is not based on the price of cryptocurrencies. It is based on the products and services being created that consumers want and are using. And so that's where the use cases are. Black and Latino communities may be the biggest holders of cryptocurrency, but we are the biggest ones who are building on products and services to address inequities. When you look at financial inclusion globally, the crypto companies are doing a lot globally. Because if you do something on the continent of Africa, there's millions of people, even at the lowest price point, you're going to make a return. Right. So in the US, it's less incentive for large companies, right? Because Black and Latino communities are dispersed all over the place. Most people don't even know. There are more Black people in rural communities than there are in urban communities. So we're building the products and services. So there's some great projects. You'll hear later from OneUnited Bank, the largest Black bank in the country, that is actually leading in this space and creating new products and services. Right? There's a neobank called First Boulevard by this young Black professionals who have just created a neobank where you could actually focus on Black empowerment, where you can actually purchase cryptocurrency. One of the projects I love is Oak Currency in Oakland, right? Black developers from crypto left and actually went back home to Oakland. They didn't say, oh, let's fix Oakland. No, they met with the mayor, they met with the state legislature, the city, and they said, how can we empower Oakland? And they created Oak Currency for Oakland. So with the people. And just last month, Harlem announced that they're going to do Harlem coin, specifically for businesses in Harlem, right? So community coins are not new. You've known a long time ago, we've tried to empower our communities and build up our communities through how can we ensure our currency circulated locally and in our community. And so the projects I'm most excited by are just that. Tavonia Evans, Black woman, created GwapCoin 6 years ago now. GwapCoin is the first cryptocurrency. It was created for the Buy Black movement. And today it really empowers people. So those are the projects you don't hear about when they're talking about the hype. But those are the things that actually matter.
Yeah. So there's real implications that communities can start to build their own currencies, and we can build wealth within those communities.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, I'd like to continue the questioning around the digital divide and digital inclusion. What is the future of the industry, and what can we do to make sure that Black people and Black businesses are not left behind?
Yes. Well, I've been working in this space for about 6 years now. as was stated, I worked in Congress, worked in the Obama administration. It was actually during the Obama administration that I first learned about Bitcoin. In 2013, a friend had a Bitcoin project, asked me to help with a press release. So I had to learn about Bitcoin in 2013 to help him with the press release. So it stayed in my radar. It wasn't until 2015, 2016 that I said, okay, I'm going to learn as much as possible. And then in 2017, since 2017, I've been working in crypto full time. So that brings me to why I am all in this space. It's because the accomplished in Washington, in Congress, working for the Obama administration, I feel empowered to do that now because of decentralization, because of the opportunity for ownership. I will tell you, those are the things I'm most concerned about, right? One of the trends I'm seeing is that when Black institutions look to get into crypto, they seek out Caucasian males to contract, to become consultants. When within crypto, there are Black leaders across the board, Black academics who have been working in crypto for the last decade, Black attorneys, Black executives at crypto companies, so there are so many Black people in crypto because we lead national adoption, because that national adoption in the US is because we did it. So therefore, how we make sure we don't lose behind is we need groups to make sure as you're looking for partners, you look for partners that look like you. Another concern of mine for the digital divide is the biggest risk to Black innovation in crypto is Washington. Right now, Congress prefers to talk about financial inclusion with wealthy white executives instead of Black leaders in crypto. It's not that they don't know we're here. I bring a delegation of people of color building in crypto all the time. We've been making sure they know who they are. The old adage is you bring the executives to the table, you talk about inclusion, you talk about diversity. Well, that may make sense, but if you're always talking to white males about diversity, inclusion, if they're only the people you're talking to about policy, so every policy you're drafting without the Black majority, the nerve center of adoption. Right now, the policy conversations that are happening outside of us, which makes no sense. There's no reason why, there are industry leaders who are Black and brown in crypto, that they're not who you're talking to. And that includes the CBC, and we have to hold them accountable because that will influence what happens here. I'll tell you, last week, I spoke at the Black Blockchain Conference. Today, I'm here at the US Black Chamber. Next week, actually, I am going to New Orleans for the National Minority Supplier Development Council Conference. After that, I'm speaking at the National Organization of Black Elected Legislative Women. Because I don't spend my time talking to them, I spend my time talking to you, our leaders, because we have an opportunity not just to hold the industry accountable. Yeah, follow the money, but follow the legislation. When you look at a lot of the inequities in our community, they're legislated. It is policies that make them so. So as we look at how we ensure that we don't have a digital divide, we have to tell Washington, you may think that the industry is the problem, you're part of the problem too. So when we talked about suppliers earlier, do we get more suppliers in crypto? Well, you know what? When I talk to crypto companies, and I've been working in this space for a long time, I worked for the largest advocacy group for crypto in Washington is Blockchain Association, representing 100 companies. And for the last 3 years, these companies have been looking to me to advise them on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I tell them they need to hire black suppliers, vendors, contractors, and the like, right? But I'm undermined all the time because every time I hear about a Black group, it's one of my white contemporaries that's telling me, oh, I'm working with this Black company, oh, I'm this. So the message to them is they actually don't need to follow follow what I'm telling them, because most of the organizations are doing politics as usual. I have a hard time convincing them Maxine Waters wants your diversity data. Well, I need you to go to the Black civil rights groups and the Latino civil rights groups and sit and, because there's a blueprint to this and you need to, well, if they can go around that and actually just contract a few, if you guys, and come to you and not, without Black and Latino people, then it's ineffective. The reality is you have Black and Latino leaders in crypto that are having the same conversations, same fights as you. And what they need your support, and they need the CBC's support and the CAC's support, because we're fighting in the trenches, trying to get inclusion, trying to get resources to our community. And the only people who are not fighting with us right now, I have to say, honest truth, is the CBC. They are our biggest adversaries because they would prefer to ignore us. That's not the CBC and Democrats as a whole. They prefer to ignore us instead of working with us to solve these problems. So we need our advocacy groups and our public institutions. And it's not just me. There's tons in the table. Courtney's back here. She'll tell you we have tons of Black men and women in crypto, Latino folks who will work with you, partner with you for free, who won't charge you, but those wonderful white male colleagues of mine will charge you. And because we're here to fix our communities, we're here to actually make sure we're empowering our communities.
Now, Cleve, this is also very encouraging and exciting, and you shared a lot of information already. Is there any final parting thoughts that you'd like to share with this audience?
Yes. So, yes, the space is absolutely complicated. It requires for you to have a different understanding of money, a different way of thinking about money. But that's only if you compare it with the traditional financial system. Who has been locked out? It's not just the unbanked. It's all of us here, Black professionals in the middle class. We know wealth managers don't care about our money no matter how many millions we make. Banks still do give us the subprime loans, right? So we are the ones that have been locked out, and we have to realize that we've been operating on an alternative financial system for decades. We've gotten by. So when you compare the crypto and the alternative financial system that we've been operating on, it looks exactly the same. But when you compare it to the ones we've been aspiring to, hoping that banks will give us better financial instruments, hoping that wealth managers and brokers will actually look to our communities, then crypto looks risky, depending on your relationship with money. So I would say do your research, start with the Bitcoin white paper at bitcoin.com. It's an academic paper. It's literally, and it would make it less spooky because right now it sounds spooky. And the other thing I would say is this space is hiring like crazy. Crypto is the first space you don't need a degree. You don't need to learn how to code because most of the applications are drag and drop. Crypto is hiring accountants, administrative assistants. Oh my God, executives, right? Just about every position you have at your job, there's a job in crypto. The great thing is many of these companies are virtual. So we need more of our communities to start looking at crypto from a different lens, from the alternative financial system you've been operating on, but also looking at it for opportunities for entrepreneurship, for small businesses. Create a merchant account to accept cryptocurrency. That's how you start accumulating your crypto. Looking for access to capital, create decentralized autonomous organizations. Although there's some regulatory concerns coming up, but look at those options.
Mm-hmm. Now, Cleve, I want to thank you for your time here today and for your thought leadership, and thank you for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Cleve Mesidor.
Thank you.
All right, now what a great way to kick off CBC Week. I would think that you all are really enjoying this information that we are being presented with today. Now, what I want to do is take a quick moment to thank our sponsors for today's policy brunch. I want to thank individually crypto.com. I want to thank Block, and I want to thank NCTA for this beautiful venue that we're at today. And I also want to thank one of our very important partners, Caesars, for their support of USBC. Now, Next, I want to make sure that each of you go out and you register for the Buy Black Conference. It's going to be taking place next month at the MGM National Harbor, October 19th through the 21st. So you want to make sure that you get your tickets early. It's going to be a really, really good event. Now, you can purchase your tickets at www.buyblackcon.com. Now, next, we'll turn our attention to the MBDA. And leading this conversation is USBC President Ron Busby Senior. He will introduce our very special guest, Donald Cravens Jr., who is the Undersecretary of Commerce at the MBDA. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Busby Senior.
I had talking points that were written out, and I said, I don't even want to see those. I have the opportunity to introduce a very good friend of mine. When I first moved to Washington, D.C., we didn't have any relationships here. I was given 6 business cards, and one of those cards was this gentleman here. I went to go visit his office. He was representing Louisiana, and at that same year, we gave Claire McCaskill, our advocate of the year, to go visit him. There weren't many black people on Capitol Hill at the time, at least that I had met. And went in his office, and I saw a sister that was walking out in front. I said, oh, shit, this brother's going to be all right. And now she's running GSA. We've all elevated our game, our responsibility, as well as the mission that we carry. This year, when the opportunity came about to run the MBDA, he and I had late night conversations, going back and forth. Man, should be the priority? Should I take the job? Should you take the job? Heck no, I shouldn't take the job. You're the right guy for the job. Family man, military man, ran the second at the Urban League, my good friend, and now the new Undersecretary for the Minority Business Development Agency, our good friend, Don Cravens.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody this morning?
Good.
Good to see you. You picked a beautiful venue. I've been here many times in the past. You hear me okay with like this? Yeah. I've been here many times in the past, and you'll take the mic, great. And so and it looked like the food was really, really good. I hate that I came a little late and had breakfast. Well, Ron, thank you for that introduction. And look, when Ron Busby calls, I'm here. And that's for 2 reasons. One, because of his leadership and his leadership throughout time. I was at the first U.S. Black Chamber event. I was working at the U.S. Senate, as Ron said, for Senator Landrieu. I was the staff director of the Small Business Committee at the time. And when Ron called then, I was here. I was with you all. And I've continued to stick out with Ron, like many of you have, because I know the importance of his leadership. The second reason I wanted to be here is I know the importance of all your leadership. Our local chambers, the work that you do. I saw my homegirl from New Orleans and her leadership, even in my home state of Louisiana. I understand the importance of what you all do. The Minority Business Development Agency, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today, this is only my 2nd or 3rd event in my new role. And so I'm honored to be here early on in my tenure to tell you about my plans and what I'm thinking 3 weeks in. But we don't have a better, stronger partner than the U.S. Black Chambers. And so I had to be here this morning, 1, because of Ron, but 2, because of your work and all of the good noise you've been making for many, many years. And so I want to just thank you for your leadership, welcome you to DC, those of you who are visiting. You came on a good week. The weather, the fall is here. And obviously Congressional Black Caucus, the annual legislative conferences this week. So you picked a wonderful time to be here. I want to talk this morning about the American entrepreneurial system. I know that you're here talking about capital and cryptocurrency and those things. And I'll talk a little bit about that today, but I really wanted to just tell you about MBDA because I need you to help me in this new role as well. And so I'm going to take, if you mind, a personal privilege to talk to you about MBDA, and then I'll let you all get back to your crypto and all your smart people issues. But I want to talk about the American entrepreneurial system, especially as it relates to African Americans and people of color. For far too long, brothers and sisters, we saw an entrepreneurial ecosystem that worked for some businesses, but not all businesses. I tell my staff, it's almost like watching sports before integration. American sports before integration were not the same as they have been after integration. Our Olympic teams were not as competitive once everybody got a chance to participate. But when it comes to our entrepreneurial ecosystem, our economy, in some ways, it seems like we're still kind of operating in a segregated system. And that's why it was important for me to take this job. We especially saw that during COVID. When we saw Black businesses, people of color who own their businesses, their doors were the first to shutter. A lot of our businesses are a one-woman team, a one-man shop. And so when the customers stopped coming and the supply chains dried up, our businesses were the first to shutter. We don't have the nest eggs that many of our other brothers and sisters have, our white brothers and sisters and other minorities may have. And so our businesses were the first to shut down. We know that historically our businesses have been disproportionately impacted. For minorities, they've always been that way. Take it from me, I'm the product of an African-American family of entrepreneurs. Both my mother and father still own and operate. They're members, they started the chamber in Lafayette, Louisiana. My dad was one of the founders. They've owned and operated a small insurance business there for 40 years. And brothers and sisters, I remember those nights. Not able to make payroll, begging the Miss So-and-so who's been working for us for 10 years to maybe wait an extra week so we could pay her. I remember those obstacles that we faced. Some of those obstacles were obstacles all small business people face. Many of those obstacles were obstacles that Black people face, Hispanic people face, Asian Americans face, Native Americans face. Being denied loans by the big name banks, struggling to get into a room with investors, losing customers to businesses down the street because for some reason, customers didn't feel as safe in your business as they do in somebody else's business. I lived that. I saw my parents work hard. They still do to make it work. The fact that they were able to make it work and support me and my brother and my sister and send us to college and graduate school, it did teach me a valuable lesson, that there was some benefit to their struggle. That if you can make it, there is a dream, that American dream in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in America, and that it can work for all people if given an opportunity and given equity in the system. To me, that is what defines an entrepreneur. To be able to do that, to drive, to push to succeed, and do it in the face of systemic racism and bigotry, that is what defines an African American entrepreneur, an Asian American entrepreneur, a Hispanic American entrepreneur, to be able to do it, a Native American entrepreneur, to be able to do it and still do it in spite of other systemic issues. That is what, why I wanted this job. That is why I wanted to be the first undersecretary of Minority Business Development. Because for 53 years, as you know, there was an MBDA, but it was a temporary agency. It was created in 1969 by President Nixon. The men and women at MBDA for 53 years had to wonder each and every day whether or not they would have a job the next day. The next administration, would we receive funding? And what we saw is we had a temporary agency. But despite that uncertainty, I do have to say the MBDA still provided a lot of success and a lot of help to a lot of brothers and sisters, many of you in this room. As a temporary agency, in 2021, MBDA served 2,888 Black or African American clients. African American owned businesses secured over $2 billion in contracts from help from the MBDA and $163 million in capital, resulting in 7,800 jobs created or retained. Now that is what the MBDA did as a temporary agency. Just think about what we're going to do as a permanent agency. Because I've got some good news. We are temporary no more. And this story doesn't get told, so I wanted to come and tell you. In November of last year, in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, in addition to the $1.2 trillion that we're all thinking about and talking about, there was a piece of the legislation that affected the Minority Business Development Agency. And for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we became a permanent agency. And the Minority Business Development Act, which was in the bill, did three things. One, it created a leadership position. The MBDA always had a national director, which was an appointed position, but it was not a Senate-confirmed position. It was not an assistant secretary, it wasn't an undersecretary, it wasn't a DepSec or a cabinet level, it was a director position. In this bill, thanks to both Republicans and Democrats, there was an undersecretary position created. Now, what does undersecretary mean? Well, it puts me on the same position as the person who runs the census, the person who runs the USPTO, the Patent and Trademark Office at the department, the gentleman who runs NOAA, the National Oceanic atmospheric administration, I'm on the same level with those individuals in the Department of Commerce. I think symbolizing to all Americans, but especially minorities, people of color, businesses of color, that this is an important priority. The second thing the act did was it said to the MBDA, continue what you're doing, but we want you to do more of it. So we've got about 30 business centers located all across America and about another 20 or 30 or so specialty centers. The act says you have to expand that. So just last week, we announced we're in 6 new states that we were not serving before. Senator Wicker from Mississippi and some of our Republican leaders said, and we want you to go to rural areas and to tribal areas. And when you do so, you have to do so through HBCUs and minority serving institutions. And we're going to be looking for opportunity to grow to little towns like where I come from, to meet entrepreneurs of color where they are. And then the third thing the act says, and this is my favorite part, the undersecretary and the MBDA are supposed to be the clearinghouse and the voice for businesses of color, for minority-owned businesses. Now, I read that a couple of times before I took that job. That's what Ron and I talked about. I said, you know, Ron, if you do this job, it's saying you're supposed to be making the good trouble that we know our former congressman, our late great John Lewis was talking about. Like, that's what it says. And you're not doing your job if you're not doing that for minority businesses. And so I'm supposed to have one of those few jobs in government. I have the only job in government where the word minority is in it, where it's expected for me to talk about all day, every day, the growth and global competitiveness of minority-owned businesses. I couldn't be more blessed. I couldn't be more fortunate. And Ron is right. We've talked about this for many, many years. Those of you who fought those fights. We've been pushing for a permanent MBDA since 1969. I didn't do it alone, for sure. Many of you were there this morning to just thank you personally for doing that. So it means now that MBDA not only has the opportunity to make change, we have an obligation and a duty to make change for all of you, to improve the system that you operate. Think about the impact we're going to have now that we are a permanent agency. It's my mission as the first ever undersecretary for MBDA to elevate and expand the agency in order to create a system that you deserve, our businesses deserve. We need to evolve, we need to elevate. As I said earlier, the systemic issues that have plagued people of color, African-American businesses in the past, cannot exist in our present or in our future if we are fully going to finally be the country where everybody gets a chance to participate in our entrepreneurial ecosystem. Capital is the key. And I know you are talking about capital today. And Ron Busby talks about capital all the time. I get it. I hear it. I know it. I grew up in it. Capital, access to capital is the key. Access to contracts is great. If you ain't got no money, you can't do the work. Access to networks is great, but if you don't have the money, then you can't be a part of the network. Access to capital is key. We're doing our part. We did 160 help African-American owned businesses secure 163 million in capital last year, but we can do better. We can do better. Black entrepreneurs still start their businesses with $35,000 of capital, while non-minority entrepreneurs begin with over $100,000 of capital. When you're already starting with less money in the bank, as many entrepreneurs of color are, especially African-Americans, it's harder for you to budget. It's harder for you to grow. It's harder for you to be successful. So brothers and sisters, I just leave you with, you know, systemic change doesn't happen overnight. It's hard. It's hard work. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it even takes decades. But I want you to know, thanks to your efforts and your support, Ron, you and all of the chamber leaders, MBDA now is going to be here for the long haul. And we're going to work hard every day to implement lasting changes. It's the only way we're truly going to give every American, every business owner, an opportunity, the tools and the resources they need to succeed. And in order to answer those questions, we'll need research and data. So I'm going to give you all an assignment. In order for me to make a case, to be your advocate, I need research. I need data. I need information that I take to Capitol Hill or that I can take to the administration, and I can say, these are the situations that our businesses are facing. These are the issues they're dealing with. This is the data. Here's the percentage. Here are the numbers. I need you to do that. I know you're doing that. That's what this roundtable discussion is. Collect that data, give it to us at MBDA. Please share it with us so we can elevate it and we can be that clearinghouse for data as it relates to all minority businesses, but specifically our business, African-American businesses, you have to have your data. Not all minority businesses face the same challenges. Not all regions face the same challenges. And so we have to be very intentional in our research, very intentional. To make this happen, we're going to need strong partners, such as the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., whose drive is aligned with ours at MBDA. The U.S. Black Chamber, Ron Busby, all of you local chamber leaders, you know what it takes to be meaningful, intentional, and so we need you to help us fight. We want an economy where a Black woman won't have to work twice as hard in less time to stand out in a room full of investors, where a bank won't deny a loan to a Hispanic-owned business with the exact same specs as the non-minority-owned business approved for a loan just hours earlier, where an Asian American-owned business, Asian American-owned restaurant isn't closed faster than the burger joint down the street because the customer doesn't understand that the best way to prevent COVID is to wash your hands, not attack an Asian-owned business. We want an economy where a young couple from rural Louisiana can be successful, can open a business without sacrificing all of their savings and all of their credit. This is our opportunity, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. It's a bold mission. I'm ready for it. I hope you are as well. It's not gonna always be easy, and it's never easy. But we're gonna get the job done because it's what the American people deserve. Help is no longer just on the way. Help is here. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, brothers and sisters. I wish you the best. We're here for you. Stay in touch with MBDA. Let us know to be more helpful. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Love you. You know what I can do. All right. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Intentionality, transparency, and accountability. Those are the things that we have called for. Don Craven's Minority Business Development Agency has heard our call, and I think he has stepped up to the challenge. When we began this organization, this journey, we had a previous chairman called Aubrey Stone. He was the visionary for the U.S. Black Chamber, and he passed several years ago, and he was able to hand the baton off to what we feel like is the new version of Aubrey Stone, the next generational leader for the U.S. Black Chamber, our good friend, our chairman of the board, Mr. Charles O'Neill. Oh, he just walked out. I guess he is a visionary leader. Our organization was really kind of, like so many other small organizations, we kind of grew relatively quickly and always trying to be innovative, always trying to come up with new concepts, new ideas. And so one of the things that we've done recently is join a partnership with the National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters. They represent radio, TV, and multimedia. One of our board members is here today who leads that organization, NABOB, Mr. Jim Wilson. If you could stand up, let people know who you are. And while he's standing, Charles O'Neill, our chairman, will come up and bring words on behalf of the U.S. Black Chamber Board of Directors. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning. And thank you so much for this opportunity, man. I really was prepared early this morning. Ron told me, I need you to give me about 5 or 6 minutes, man. And then he said everything I wanted to say. So again, I'll say good morning. I caught Don on his way out, and I had to jab him a little bit. He was, as you know, as you just heard, Deputy Secretary for MBDA. And he came and talked to a group of business owners that said, give me your data. And I'm saying, right, Don, that's a contract, man. We got to sell you this data. We're not giving away nothing, man. We're business people. But I want you to know, and my fellow colleagues on the board will attest to you that while all of our pillars of action, all our pillars of service are important to us, they will attest that advocacy is the one that most animates me. Because of the things that we do in our advocacy pillar, manifests itself in the things that you've seen in our successes in creating, changing, implementing, and causing good trouble in the policy arena. So the success that we've seen in the creation of a full agency at MBDA, the things we've seen in Quick Pay, the things we've seen in the Community Navigator Pilot Program, things we've seen in the creation of a Women's Business Center in Oklahoma and one on the way in South Carolina as a result of advocacy. The input we get from local chambers across the country, over 150 of them in 42 states, again, underscores the way we're able to activate our advocacy agenda, and that translates into interactions like we heard from Representative Plaskett from the U.S. Virgin Islands. So not just local initiatives, not just national initiatives, but actual international initiatives. Ron and I were a two-man delegation in Morocco this past summer, ending up with an agreement with Prime Minister Akhnouch and attending the U.S. Africa Business Summit in Marrakesh this year. That again bookends Ron and Stoney's foray into South Africa about 5 or 6 years ago, and now we have overtures from Kenya in East Africa and Ghana on the west coast of Africa to put down the USBC footprint. That's not because of something that Charles O'Neill does or something that Ron Busby does individually, but because of the collective energy of all of us and our advocacy strategy. So I don't think that we can do more without more of us. And so the activity of adding NABOB, because communications is so critical to what we do as an organization, expanding our voice, multiplying our voice, based here in DC, not just in Oakland, California, but down in Texas where I live, and up all the way to the border in Canada, making them understand how critical the role Black Chambers of Commerce is, that will make us be even more successful than what you've seen and witnessed today. Thank you again for your own support for the work we do. Thank you, Ron, for the opportunity to join with our guests this morning. If there's anything that we can do to assist you going forward, all you got to do is send up a flare. Thank you so much.
Charles said something I don't think you guys caught, and that is the U.S. Black Chamber has been named, kind of pinned. Actually, we were in a room very close to this early on, and I was giving a speech, and a young man came out and said, "I want to introduce you to Ron Busby, the voice of Black business." And I was like, "Oh God, I got to write that down." Last year, Charles and I did have the opportunity to travel. Actually, earlier this year, we had an opportunity to travel, and we were there, and someone made a change. They said, U.S. Black Chamber, the global voice of Black business. So our new tagline as going forward will be the U.S. Black Chamber, the global voice of Black-owned business. What we have seen is across the country that continents as well as countries are looking to do business with Black businesses. Many of us have saying, you know, I just want to do business across the street, across my city, across the state. But as we did our research and surveys, 98% of America's growth will come outside of our borders. Let me say that again, 98% of the growth will come outside of the United States. And so when we let other countries take advantage of what's going on the continent, it is our fault. When we went, they were saying, yes, we want to do business with Black Americans. We just got to make sure that we are the conduit to make sure that Black Americans understand the value of the intellect that we bring. If you were with us at our national conference, we had one of our keynote speakers talk about the continent of Africa is about 150 years behind the United States. Now, I'm not 150 years old. I'm probably the oldest guy in the room, one of the older. I'm 63 years old, and I've had the opportunity to see this country grow. But when we look at our history, it is Black Americans that created many of the technologies, the infrastructures that we utilize in this country. But when you go to Africa, you will see that they have brought every other foreign country there to develop their infrastructure other than America. And what they're looking for from America is not the White House. It's not Congress. They're looking for you. They're like, Ron, bring us the Black businesses, the Black experts, the Black contractors to come and do the work. We were there. The one thing that I noticed is that when we were driving up and down the freeway, we just saw all this litter. It's just a great amount of litter there. And we were like, man, it'd be easy just to do some recycle. While we were there, there was a firm that we met. It was a recycling company. They were out of Texas. And we said, man, that's great. White firm, we can make this happen. We had conversations with decision makers and said, if we could put together a Black firm from the United States to do a joint venture with the existing firm that's doing business in Africa, with the relationships that we have in Africa, would you be willing to do business? And they said yes. That's what it takes, just understanding the opportunities as well as the relationships and the challenges, and that's how you really develop opportunities. Let me finish my statements because I think the man of the hour is here. A few years ago at one of our national conferences, we asked Congressman Booker to come and say a few words, and we thought it was just going to be, you know, a few words of inspiration for us. I always say as a good keynote speaker, you need to do three things. You need to educate your audience, you need to motivate your audience, and you need to entertain your audience. This man here does all of those extremely well. Let me introduce to the podium our good friend here at the U.S. Black Chamber, Congressman Cory Booker. Hopefully, our next president of the United States of America. How you doing, sir? Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Thank
Great to see you.
for being here,
It's
man.
my pleasure. My pleasure. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm a little jealous because I tried to be president, and this man is the president. Title, I don't. I can settle for being a senator. Kind of expression of investment efforts. Thank you very much. Was I not loud enough? That we weren't going to be successful. This group is in many ways the legacy of groups like that Booker T. Washington formed, the first ever national Black business organization. And for me, I've understood my entire career the importance of building wealth within African American communities. Remember, I was the mayor of New Jersey's largest city, a majority African American city, and we saw for generations, unfortunately, wealth pouring out of our city, disinvestment, lack of economic opportunity. And we knew one of our key strategies had to be growing our city economically, but making sure that that growth was built indigenous as well. And we did so many creative things to help create Black economic opportunity, from investing capital with small Black businesses all throughout our city, with making sure there were business-to-business relationships when large businesses came in, making sure that we as a city, contracting to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, had an active program helping women and minorities get city contracts. And then finally, overcoming many of the obstacles that have been put in place for our communities that are, in my opinion, deeply unjust. Like the fact that there's no difference in America between Blacks and whites for using drugs or selling drugs, but Blacks disproportionately have criminal records. So we did a big effort to try to make sure that people who were formerly incarcerated or who had criminal convictions for doing things that past presidents, senators, and House members have admitted to doing could still access capital. Now, everything old is new again. I feel like when I became a senator, I'm focusing on those same things. Now, let's understand, in America, we've had about 2,000 senators in the history of our country. Only 11 of them have been Black. I'm the fourth one that was popularly elected as a United States Senator. The one right before me who was elected, a funny name, I can't remember. But I understood that when I came here, my unique lived experience was going to give me the opportunity to call questions that just weren't being called. Like I got right here and found out immediately that the wealth creation that government actually often does was not being shared equitably or in any way equal access to opportunity. I asked the question, who's running our pensions? You know, hundreds of billions of dollars. This is how millionaires are created. And when you have Texas to New York having emerging manager programs for women and minority businesses who actually get better returns, according to studies done by Barclays and PNC. Here in the United States of America, our biggest pensions, not $1 was being managed by someone of color or a women-run organization. There is tremendous opportunity if we create an equality of access, have equity as our vision. And what I've been trying to do in short 9 years in the Senate, that's short in Senate years, I've been trying to do everything I can to look at every possible opportunity to create more wealth for more people. Understanding that wealth in the Black community doesn't stay within the Black community, it has a multiplier effect for our nation. And so what a lot of the issues that have been coming up have been, for me in these last few years, just been focused on common sense things. We take the pandemic, for example. We saw that the majority of Black businesses actually aren't banked. And so when we started the programs like EIDL and PPP, Black businesses were not getting their fair share and suffering in many ways greater risks for closing and never opening again after the pandemic. And so me and some of my partners like Mark Warner stepped in to make sure that minority development associations, MDA, and other organizations that focused on giving loans and connecting people with loans were in play. I remember sitting there at the end of the Trump administration and calling the question, why are you putting limits to get PPP loans on people who have criminal convictions? If they've done their time and they are entrepreneurs, why are you banning them arbitrarily from these resources? And so much of my work is always looking out to make sure we are tearing down obstacles, because everybody in this room knows we are still nowhere near equity when it comes to things like access to capital, access to opportunity. One of the bills I'm most proud of is Opportunity Zone, where we created, me and Tim Scott, another bald-headed Black man in the Senate, with Warnock, we got 3. We just said, we said we've got to drive capital into communities, rural low-income communities, urban low-income communities that rarely see that. Since we've done, we are seeing massive amounts, literally billions of dollars of investment in places we just didn't see it before. Take, for example, Selma, Alabama, a low-income city. At the foot of Pettus Bridge, there's investments now happening to build a hotel in an area that for too long has been strapped for capital. But we all have to make sure that when capital is into urban communities or Black communities, that African Americans are sharing in those opportunities, which frankly, we see examples where that's just not happening. Let me give you one multi-billion-dollar business where we are seeing African Americans being shut out at rates that are stunning to me, and that is marijuana. We have this idea that when we would open the doors to marijuana, it would actually help us to stop the prohibition on marijuana, which was disproportionately targeted towards Black and brown people, but also create business opportunities for Black and brown people. I had this hope that it would be an economically a democratizing effort, that in communities like Newark, New Jersey, or South Central LA, you would see Black and brown folks emerging as business leaders in these areas, but that just is not proving to be the case. One of the reasons why, again, while some states or communities have equity, just don't. And so we're seeing the people that are getting these opportunities often are the people with the most capital already, most connections already. Blacks make less than 5% of the marijuana businesses out there, Latinos less than 5%, and this is problematic. But here's what's even more problematic. A lot of Blacks are getting their business licenses, but because the federal government has not legalized or decriminalized, they can't access banking industries. Banks won't loan to them. And so what you see happening right now, literally probably today in America, is these multi-state operators, people with a lot of access to capital already, are coming in and buying the licenses from minorities who can't afford to keep their businesses afloat by mortgaging their houses and more. I met with a group of Black owners in Chicago, and they were just telling me these desperate stories. and then how much money people are coming to offer them just to buy their license. And now they have time, patient capital to wait, and they're going to make millions of dollars off of the licenses that they've already gotten. And so for me, I want to make sure we democratize capitalism, that the winners don't just keep compounding their winnings, but that we start to create more opportunities for more people to get into the game. And that involves a lot of work on the policy side. But there are exciting possibilities. Let me give you one. There's a whole world opening up called Web 3.0, where because of blockchain technology, we have the potential of transforming the next sort of wave of internet. I remember the first internet where a lot of people made a lot of money. But again, the patterns of people with wealth, often compounding wealth, kept going on. And I know a lot of people in the VC world who are giving money to people that they're comfortable with, that they know and that they're connected to. And the amount of money that minorities or women get is such a small share of the VC. But blockchain technology offers a possibility, a hope for us to create new democratized economic opportunity for people. Look, if you're a Black artist, many of us Black artists who are discovered, they sell a piece of art, then it's resold for more and more money. They never share in the profits. With blockchain, you could literally write into the contracts that every time that art is sold, a percentage of it goes to the original artist. There is extraordinary opportunity in this new era of technology if we make sure that as the rules are being written, I sit on the agricultural committee that's going to be founding a lot of the rules, because many of these new cryptocurrencies are commodities in my view. We have to make sure that their rules are being written in a way that is inclusive, that focuses on equity. And right now, Blacks are overrepresented in investing in the coins, but now we have some concerns about consumer protection, the kind of scams and schemes that are going on that unfortunately many consumers, period, are being sucked in, not to mention African Americans. And so I'm here to tell you, we cannot forget the policy space. I tell this to folks all the time. There is a connection, and has always been, between economic power, political representation, policy. All of our society is interwoven. And unfortunately, we know our history. A lot of the systems of America have been created in times where there was overt racism, overt policy racism, and it has hurt us dramatically. What systems am I talking about? Well, look at the outcomes of the healthcare system. Blacks have dramatically higher rates of disease. Food systems, we have higher rates of diet-related disease. My kids walk into a bodega in Newark and they get a Twinkie product cheaper than an apple, not because it represents the true cost. This isn't free market capitalism. We as a government subsidize everything in that Twinkie and nothing with the apple. We have made a policy choice that only 2% of our ag subsidies go to the kind of foods that nutritionists tell us to eat the most of. Policy affects the outcomes. So from the mortgage industry to the education industry and education in this country, we are seeing rules being written that have disproportionately impacted certain communities to create outcomes that further undermine what is the overall wealth disparities in our nation. And so this organization is so important because you are advocating and supporting not just the strength of businesses in the Black community, but you also are advocating for the kind of policies that are going to create a more fair, equitable playing field. Again, I'm not looking to give one group an advantage over another group. I see this as Team America. But if Team America sidelines a lot of the genius, a lot of the entrepreneurial spirit of some, then we are undermining the wealth and prosperity of us all. Let me end with this. Most people forget that Martin Luther King came to Washington with a whole bunch of other great leaders who had the March on Washington here a little bit before I was born. My parents were here in DC, they met, they married here. My mom from Fisk, my dad coming from North Carolina Central University. My dad had the luck and the fortune to meet and marry my mom. My mom had the mercy and generosity of soul to marry my dad. Here in DC, we're a DC Chocolate City story. My mom, that summer at the March on Washington, literally was working in the DC public schools. Then for the summer, she was working with the Urban League, helping to organize for the march. And what she would remind me growing up is that the most of the pillars of the March on Washington were not civil rights pillars, they were economic rights pillars. Most people forget about this. It is a continuance from Booker T. Washington and many of those who came up from slavery, who knew that African Americans had to participate in the economic game. And what's amazing to me about those years, from the time my parents lived in Washington, D.C. at the March on Washington to the time that King was built, was up until that time, we were closing the black-white wealth gap. What happened, though, unfortunately, between the time I was born, late 60s, early 70s, until 2008, 2009, that gap continued to close. But then in the Great Recession, it set us all the way back to where we were around the time that King was marching here in Washington, D.C. The black-white wealth differential is that big. And again, this is not just a tragedy for black folks, it is causing poverty for all of America. And so the question I want you all to ask yourself is the question there where King was shot at the Lorraine Motel. There's a question to us. This man that stood here in Washington talked about a dream. Again, not just that my little black children and little white children will be able to play together and learn together. No, if you look at the pillars, it was an economic dream. And so if you go to the motel where King was shot, I was just there a month or two ago, standing on that balcony, looking at the line of the bullet. Right there is words from the Bible. There is a question being called to Black Americans, to all Americans. If you look there, it's words from the Bible. It's the family of Joseph, his brothers, grabbed Joseph and threw him into a well to die. And what they said before they grabbed him to throw him into this well to die is written there where King is. And it says right there at the Lorraine Motel, "Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dream." We now have to answer that question. What will become of his dream, of our dream, of the American dream, of liberty and justice for all, of prosperity and opportunity for all? What's going to become of that dream? We can't just sit back and hope, wish, or pray. I was brought up in a black church where I was taught that faith without works is dead. We can't surrender any space, whether it's the educational space or the economic space, and definitely not the policy space. We all must come together and work to create the dreamed of, that King spoke, that I still believe is our destiny. But we got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
How about another round of applause for Senator Booker? Ron was right. Great speakers can educate, empower, and motivate. So that was very, very powerful. This next panel is going to be on the new black commerce. Now, there's a new way of thinking about how black businesses, entrepreneurs, creators, and consumers are buying and selling goods or services. Now, it's not just about the money or the digital currency that we just learned about. It's about what business owners are able to build with their customers in this new metaverse, what's called the metaverse. Now, this next panel is all about the new kind of commerce, one that's being created by people like you and I. A kind of commerce that's more than just about buying and selling. It's about changing the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Howard Jean, Erin Cohee, LaKisha Greenwade, and Courtney Robinson to the stage. And Howard's getting mic'd up right now, so we're going to have everyone take their places.
Testing, testing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Is it morning time? Is it afternoon? What time is it? Morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm a former teacher, so I'm not going to start until we're warmed up. Good morning. Good morning. I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it. So I like to start with mountain and valley. And mountain and valley is a way to us to get to know each other, but also for you to know who we are and what we stand for, what we're about. So I'm opening up with a poem. It's from Nelson Mandela's Long Road to Freedom. It talks. I have walked the long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made many missteps along the way. But I discovered a secret, that after coming many hills, there are more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest and look back on the journey that I've come. But now, I cannot stop. For with great freedom comes responsibility, and I dare not linger. We're here to be focused, not to linger, to be focused about what we're talking about today, which is Web 3.0. So if you look on your sheets, my company, Black Meta Agency, as you see, we have a little learning guide here because we know this is new information as it relates to cryptocurrency, NFTs, blockchain. So take your time, refer to this document as we talk because we don't want anybody left out of the conversation. And also, we're going to have some questions, so please write your questions because we want to get engagement going because we have some really, really amazing people here. So my mountain, for me, was being here today. The story of me being here at US Black Chamber is that I started as just a program coordinator working with the President's Circle, managing their more high net worth individuals getting into corporate America. And then from there, I did work with the Sacramento Chamber, doing emerging acquisitions. And then with the Ferguson, it started their chamber when Mike Brown was murdered. And then we also did the Opportunity Zone conversations down there where I talked to the community about, you know, the biggest barrier for us doing business is each other. It's trust. And we did not get the airport because we didn't trust each other. However, this is another time for us to trust each other, a new paradigm. So I'm here to kind of share with some of my panelists today. I'll let them introduce themselves. Courtney will go first, and then we'll go to our bank friend. And then lastly, we love banks, and also LaKisha Greenwade.
Hi, everyone. I am Courtney Robinson, and I'm the head of financial inclusion and public policy development at Block. Block, you may know us as our former name, Square Incorporated. Square is for small businesses. We are also the parent company of Cash App, and our head of Cash App policy, Amina Ross, is right there. If you have Cash App problems, I'm calling her out. Title music streaming service for artists and entrepreneurs, TBD, Decentralized Web startup, and then Spiral, a Bitcoin nonprofit.
Wow, what a resume. Can you hear me?
You good? You good?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the chambers and to all of you for being here today. I'm incredibly grateful and honored to be on this panel and in this room with such incredible speakers. My name is Erin Cohee, and I am the Vice President of Digital Customer Experience at OneUnited Bank. OneUnited Bank is the largest Black-owned bank in the country, and we are also the first Black digital bank in the country. We've been operating as a digital bank for over 2 decades now. Our mission at OneUnited is to close the racial wealth gap, and we use financial technology and financial literacy in order to help families to build generational wealth.
Good morning, everyone. I'm LaKisha Greenwade, based out of Baltimore, Maryland. I'm the founder and CEO of Wearable Tech Ventures, which we aspire to be the #1 global ecosystem dedicated to the development and promotion of wearable technology. And for those of you that may be saying, what is wearable technology? Basically, is the gateway into the metaverse, but then it also encompasses legacy products such as wearable watches and whatnot. And then it also transitions into software that is used in the metaverse and in other areas of that. I also consult with a DoD Black-owned contractor as their Director of Innovation, where we help to incorporate wearable technology at L2 Defense.
Thank you. So Mountain and Valley, let's talk about this Web3 blockchain space. What's been your valley in learning this space, and what's been your mountain in learning or accomplishing or earning resources or revenue?
Okay, I'll start. I'll say my valley was just trying to figure out what was going on. I know a couple of people brought that up, but before my time at Block, I worked on the House Financial Services Committee under Chairwoman Waters, and I think just the scramble to figure out what was going on. So some of the things that folks prior to me had talked about, like the regulatory framework, catching up to the reality that we're in, a legacy banking system, Title 12 being written hundreds of years ago. Like, how does all of that fit in, and how do we make sure that this new technology inures to the benefit of everyone and not just people who don't look like us? And I think that the high point has really been getting into the inclusion space at my current employer at Block. I mean, it's very much an institution where economic empowerment is at the forefront, and a lot of the things we do are meant to help bring people into the economy, equitable access to the economy. So we have a $100 million social and racial equity investment fund. And part of that money is earmarked for CDFIs and MDIs. Part of that money is earmarked for neighborhood development, but some of it is also earmarked for specifically Bitcoin education grants. And that's to try to make sure that, again, people have the space and opportunity to learn about our monetary system, the lived experience of money versus the theory of money, and then how that all ties into access to banking in the global economic system for people of color and people who, again, have historically been locked out of the systems that were not built for our benefit. So that is my current mountain.
I like it. Next, please share.
Oh, mountain and valley. Let's see. Well, I just will say, I think that often people see the space as being confusing, like it's hard to get to grips with. I don't really think it's that confusing or that complicated. I think Cleve explained it incredibly well, but it's really what we're talking about here is decentralized record keeping. And the importance of that, if anybody's seen a spreadsheet, right, you understand the importance of record keeping, right? But rather than one single person owning the record and potentially being able to alter the record, we're going to democratize the record and make sure that everybody is responsible for keeping it and keeping us honest. That's all we're talking about here. It's not an overly complicated concept, and I think that there's a lot of language that's used in the space to gatekeep, to try to keep people out of the community. Your handout is incredibly valuable because it breaks it down into just one sentence, but it's really, that's all it is. You don't need to understand encryption to necessarily understand the concepts of what we're dealing with here. So I think sort of getting over the hump of people being scared to sort of engage in this because they think it's going to be complicated. They think you need a degree in coding and everything to be able to start taking advantage of it, when that's simply not the case. It's really, like Cleve said, $5, $1. You can get access. You can start engaging in this space. That, I think, is the valley of really trying to get people to understand it's not too complicated what we're talking about here. The mountain is, I love to see the engagement that we're seeing from our community specifically. We were maybe a bit less engaged when it came to the internet in the 80s and the 90s, when there was real opportunity to build new applications, to build new business models on the internet. And blockchain is really, it's a platform, right? As we've heard, the many, many use cases that exist on top of it. We already have an incredibly entrepreneurial community in the Black community, and we also have a community that are early adopters, engaged in technology, and incredibly creative. So I think there's a massive opportunity that we're already just at the beginning of taking advantage of to create sort of a whole new world, new businesses that never existed before, to utilize our creativity, but to finally be compensated for it. Because we've long been the arbiters of culture, but we have not been getting compensated for it. So I think there's a massive, massive opportunity for us to reimagine the world quite literally. Right, and it's fortunate that we're just at the beginning and that we have such serious people within our community that are supporting this conversation and really ensuring that the education, the word gets, that crypto is here, that blockchain is here, that it's not too complicated to take advantage of, but that the Black community really has one of the best opportunities to benefit from what's happening.
Starting with the valley, and you know how the saying goes, started from the bottom, now we're here.
Hey.
Basically from that valley, that's how I created Wearable Tech Ventures after the murder of Freddie Gray. And I had a background in corporate America where I was always tutored to be, one of those leaders that would go to the C-suite. And I used my background in economics and marketing to say, let's highlight the genius. Let's highlight Black genius that is not seen in the media. And I was telling my colleague here that as a result of understanding at a time the history of Baltimore and their contribution to fashion, and understanding back then when I started and self-funded this in 2015, the tech had not yet entered Baltimore. I said, what would happen if we put fashion and tech together? And so I self-funded the first Wearable Tech Expo in the state of Maryland. And I brought in Beyonce's fashion director to help me explore what could be, even outside of fashion tech. Moving forward now into 2022, the mountain is that now we have representation in 4 continents. We have businesses that are growing from collaboration with fintech to medtech to the metaverse to health, etc. And then we also have a pipeline that we're developing with youth. And so many of you may have heard of the gaming system called Roblox, right? well, we're actually one of their preferred education providers. So now we're in a realm where we're expanding our educational system from middle to high schoolers to that of K through 12. And what's going to happen is that these youth entrepreneurs, which will become members because they're going to help bring you into the metaverse so that you can do business and have those physical interfaces there. But basically, we are creating that talent, which there's very few talent in the world that is able to create these worlds in the metaverse. So we're that one-stop shop where if you want to address coming into that new realm and utilizing Web3, you could come to us. Or if you want to work with one of our 100 startups that are led by Black, brown, female, different founders, you can work with them and license their creations, and then we can take over and be known as the innovators that we truly are. So we are at that realm of that mountaintop. And one of the other mountains that, that's in front of us is that thing of funding. So we're working to develop our own pool of funds to make sure that these entrepreneurs continue to thrive. And as I heard the president say today, not only here in America, but globally. So we have that network established with those 4 continents, and hopefully we'll get to all of them by 2025.
So I want to kind of go a little more into the NFT space as we kind of educate and share with our colleagues about what NFTs are. And the valley part for me was realizing that I was in a room, I went to Minnesota to VCon. It was a 5,000 person conference. NFTs and just a lot of people. I realized there was only like 50, 100 Black people there. So I tweeted, like, my goal is to bring the US Black Chamber into this space and other Black communities. So tell me, how are you all working with other communities that are disenfranchised and not even aware on the education part? Because before you can be an adopter or a consumer, you got to be educated first. So anyone want to take that up?
Yeah. Well, I can say from our side, working with the startup and working with innovation, of course, we educate and we talk to our parents about, what are NFTs and what does Web3, et cetera. Some of the language that we've already used here today. But where we're seeing the biggest uptake and where people can see the actual success materialize is going to be through our youth entrepreneurs as they are creating these worlds, as they are developing even digital clothing for their characters within Roblox. By the way, I actually created digital clothing and debuted it in 2021 and had the largest group of African-American women. It was my sorority sisters for our 20th anniversary. So we're just extending that over to our youth so that they know how to capitalize on that in these digital worlds. And as a result of them seeing the success, we're able to communicate that to their parents, to their grandmothers, to their aunts, and to their uncles to show that this is real, that you can create a business. And they might just ask that little one for a loan or help them to, invest in another startup.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So NFTs you've mentioned specifically, which I think are very interesting, and we've done some work in that space. So when we talk about NFTs.
And also, again, it's on the document. NFTs is to the left. It should be at the, I think, top of the second one. Again, refer to that for any questions on how to stay along. There you go.
Summary is NFT stands for non-fungible token, and it's a way to digitally signify ownership of a product. That product could be physical or it might be digital, right? So at OneUnited, we worked with an artist in partnership with a few different organizations in order to develop an NFT. It was specifically around Josephine Baker, which if you don't know the history of Josephine Baker, she was a civil rights hero. She was a spy and has received a Black American who received the highest medals of honor from the French government for her work in the French resistance to fight against World War II. She did a million amazing things, and we were really able to help to promote her legacy through the development of this NFT, a piece of artwork that originally started off as a portrait, and then we were able to move into the digital realm. So why is that important besides getting the opportunity to highlight this incredible person? Well, for the artists themselves, and Senator Booker started to talk about it, it means that the artist can then start to receive residuals from their artwork, right? So you might sell your original art piece for $1,000, and then a few years from now, it's sold for $5,000, and then $10,000. You can actually build it. Yeah, $5 million. Yeah. I'm giving very small, but you see, you can build into the contract, right, that you will receive the residuals from every sale of that document, of that piece of artwork, and you can see how your work accrues value. That's huge for an artist to prove, not to just tell you, oh yeah, I sold my work for $20,000, but maybe you did, maybe you didn't. No, to be able to see the transaction take place. Another really interesting use case, I think, in that space, is around music, and we talked about being cultural arbiters, right? So we're seeing a use case now where we as a community, we can, or as an individual, you can go in and invest in an artist, a musical artist or whatever type of artist you want that you think will be successful, right? And then you're investing in them as if they are a business. And as that artist continues to do more streams or more sales of their work, you as an early investor in them actually receive payment from that artwork that comes directly. It's not like they have to go, you have to trust them to pay you every time they get paid, but no, it happens through technology automatically, right? So these are all really interesting use cases. It means that our community, which has long been the decision maker when it comes to what is cool in the culture, will now actually have the opportunity to profit from that. So at OneUnited, it was important for us to start engaging in the crypto space, and this was a great space to engage us to help with the development of this piece at the intersection of finance, technology, and culture. But then what we really focused around was onboarding the community into this space. So we held many sessions digitally and in person to help to educate people about how to open up their first crypto wallet, because it's a really easy entry point. It takes just a couple of seconds, right? And what we found in sort of this education and helping people to acquire their first NFT, which we often gave away free of charge, was that even the best crypto applications out there, here we were really showing people about MetaMask, which is a digital wallet. You can think of it like a bank account. Was that this is a really simple really simple thing to use. It really requires 2 steps to start it. But people really still struggle to be able to learn this new technology. So I think the biggest barrier when it comes to crypto is user experience, right? It's like, it seems complicated. And really that gives a huge opportunity to be able to make these processes simpler and simpler for the everyday person to use. So while it's still complicated, that means there's a huge amount of opportunity to develop new applications for it that are easier for anybody to use without needing a degree in this.
Courtney, so what's the importance of adopting, these currencies and these methodologies in business for Black owners, Black business owners here, and also, what happens if we don't, right? What's going to happen if we don't?
I mean, we'll see, but I think, the importance of adoption is just being able to give people choice, right? I don't think anybody in particular here is evangelizing or saying like you have to do this or you should do that. It's more about a financial system that works for everyone. So I think some of the best use cases, especially for small business owners, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, are things like remittances, being able to transfer money across borders without having to pay, large fees and things like that for money transmission, being able to accept currency of any kind and not just like a specific sovereign currency where you are. Like that is the potential. And then also the decentralized nature of everything, as they've discussed, like there's no one clearinghouse or ownership. In our current financial system, the trusted element is the clearinghouse. It is the bank that's saying, okay, this transaction is real. It is, a government agency saying, yes, we can verify that this money came from this person and we're willing to stand behind that. With a system of people who are doing that verifying, that trust and verification process, it can be spread amongst the people. And then that's also take away some of the, I'm like trying not to bust too many acronyms at once, but I was like, the elements of our financial system that do keep people out, maybe not intentionally, but just by design, like know your customer, be it Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering, you can be kept from participating in the financial system, having a bank account, getting a loan, things like that, just because of the clearinghouses that currently exist saying, you know what, we don't want to take on that risk. With a decentralized financial system, with blockchain, with cryptocurrencies, you get to sidestep that. And I know it's like a lot of words at once. I'm still in Web 1.0 with the tubes and the internet, and and then my baby brother, now I know who to ask about this Roblox money he keeps begging off of me. But I think with not just us, but the generations coming behind us, like the more that the technology advances and grows, the more there will be a chance for people to be able to come into the financial system without a barrier. They can't be kept out. And that is it. So I think just learning by doing, people always learn by doing. That's the quickest way, instead of reading white papers and listening to us talk. Like I'm telling you, until I purchased my first or used Ethereum, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. But until you get a digital wallet and you accept payment and you say, okay, the Lightning Network, I can pay over the Lightning Network and it's just as fast as a transaction if I ran it over payment rails with like Visa or MasterCard or something like that. You just kind of have to see and know whether you trust in it. But once you do, the opportunities for business owners, people of color, people banking who look like us are much more open.
Okay. So use cases are super important. Antoine and our vice chair went to a high school in DC, and we talked about use cases with students. So some use cases that I really enjoy in this space are if you're doing mental health and you're doing therapy treatment, right? I have a set of metaverse goggles, well, Oculus goggles in my book bag, but essentially you can go into your session with a therapist, and you can be transported into a training or whatever you feel is important to you to relax, or aggressive therapy, right, as a childhood in your own city, your own state. So as we talk about cool use cases that's on the marketplace, because you all see different things at different vantage points, give us some use cases that they can relate to and say, okay, I can integrate this into my lifestyle. Because one thing about us is that we can't have fun with it, we're not going to enjoy it. We're not going to indulge in it, right? We can't put some swag on it, it's not going to get out the door. So what are some cool things and also business use cases, and we can mix it up. And also I think it's amazing that we have a full panel of women talking about crypto and blockchain in this space. It's incredible, and shout out to my co-founder, Fitsum. I have a female co-founder. I tapped her last week, so raise your hand, Fitsum. Yeah. So business use cases and just interesting lifestyle use cases, kind of, what people's appetite for what does this look like?
So I can start. During the pandemic, being in the metaverse kept my sanity. I traveled to Paris, to Greece, I went on treats and everything else like that, and it looked so real. It felt so real. So that's one of the things, is that it can transport you like the Jetsons, but without having that Jetsons experience, into another world that actually feels real. As you already mentioned, businesses can be there and you can accept payment there. So I love that because it lowers the barrier to entry for all businesses. So you don't necessarily have to depend on brick and mortar. You could build that into the space and it looks real, really real. It feels real. Another thing, you like entertainment, concerts. There are concerts on there all the time. There are TV shows. So I love it that you can do anything that you do physically, pretty much, you can do that there. And then also you'll be able to kiss somebody. They're doing research on that right now. It's been tested.
I think on the metaverse specifically, it's really interesting for us. So OneUnited, we have branches in 3 cities, in Boston, Miami, and Los Angeles, but we're a digital bank, so you can use us in all 50 states, right? But people still, even though you can do everything that you could do in a branch, you can do in your city without a branch through the use of ATMs and digital services, right? But people really still want that in-person experience. They want to be able to talk to somebody. And when you ask them why, it's just because they feel more comfortable having a conversation, seeing someone. So that for us, the metaverse is really intriguing, the ability to build a physical branch in the digital world so that you can just put on your glasses and all of a sudden you're transported into our branch and you're looking face to face with one of our tellers who looks like you, and you can have a conversation about your banking, right?
Yeah,
so that's a really interesting proposition. And I think people then say, well, what is the point of buying like digital real estate? What is that all about? Why would I need digital real estate? I can barely get real estate. So the way that the internet is set up, right, is that you go and you search for, say, a particular brand, let's say Telfar. You go and you search for Telfar, you go to the Telfar website, and that's cool. Maybe Telfar will have like an ad or a partnership with some other brand, and you might get to that next website that way. But really, if you want to go to the next brand, you kind of need to go back out of your search and start over from the beginning. And what the metaverse enables us to do is actually to build businesses next to each other, so that you go to the new Black Wall Street in the metaverse, and you get to see lined up all the Black-owned businesses in a visual way as if you were in a shopping mall, right? So you get to go and see, okay, I'm at the Black Bank, and next I'm gonna go buy things from the Black retailer, and then I'm going to buy things without having to sort of navigate and go through lists and then individually click into each one.
Right.
So I think that's a particularly interesting use case.
Could I piggyback on that really
Yeah.
quickly? Another use case is use of contracts, business people here, right? So in the future, it may not all be paper, it may not all be on the computer. It's going to be through the NFTs to create contracts, to buy and sell real estate, to get married. All of that can be powered through NFT and blockchain.
Yeah. So I do want to get into the MR, AR, but can you share more about what you all are doing around education with your organization? Because I know you all do some education projects, some really cool things in the community now.
I can talk about
Anybody?
I was gonna say, because you're looking at all of us. I was like, you.
Courtney. I
Okay.
apologize, Courtney.
No, so we do have a wonderful team at Block that does a lot of external affairs work, community affairs work, but I think specifically in this space, like I said, we have our Bitcoin endowment grant. So anyone who is doing educational work that related to Bitcoin STEM that's for the benefit of traditionally or historically or currently under-resourced communities can apply for a grant, and we do give that in Bitcoin. It's remitted in Bitcoin. And then we've also, I guess you've probably seen our founder, Jack Dorsey, our CEO, and one of our board members, Sean Jay-Z Carter, started the Bitcoin Academy in the Marcy houses where Jay-Z grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And so that has been their personal passion project to bring direct education around Bitcoin, financial education, et cetera, to folks, because, you know, your economic circumstance should not be a barrier to what you're allowed to know. So that's really their ethos. So, and then that and a combination of working with, we partner with CDFIs and MDIs on initiatives related to this. Because when we're talking about getting money any way you can get it, I mean, like, let's be real. all cryptocurrencies are not created equal, but when we're talking about things like Bitcoin and things that work more like currencies than commodities, which Cleve was talking about earlier, you know, if you can get the money, if it's a way for you to be tapped into the economic system, like that's what you need to do. So like, or being able to bring banking access to folks for all the reasons that they were talking about, just not having access to traditional branches like that. So doing that partnership work to go out and do the education for small business owners and for other financial institutions. So that way, again, we can open up the size and scope of people who have access to our global economic system.
Great. So as we talk about mixed reality is essentially like a dashboard. If you have a BMW, the hologram on your dashboard, or MR can be if you're traveling on, if you have your phone and you go to Google Maps and you show your phone on Google Maps, it shows the buildings through your phone. So MR is used in our cars, fancy cars, et cetera. What are some interesting other ways that MR, AR are being used? And this is the Web3 conversation we're having now. So Web3 is just a step above Web2 where you can kind of integrate a little more and do some cool things. So talk about those things, please.
Well, you're talking about transportation, and so that's going to be a key industry that's going to be using this. But I'm from the Midwest. I'm originally from Ohio, so that's where a lot of plants and factories. So you're going to see that even being used for those that are still working in those facilities for safety, for those that are working on planes and those that are developing and building those things to make sure that no one falls under. Even in situations where people are still going down into mines, you're going to be seeing the use of technology and also with incorporation with wearables to maintain that safety so that we don't have, news coverage with, trying to find someone after a catastrophe.
Cool. Any experience you want to share? Any?
I guess my best virtual reality use case, which is the branches. I'll talk about another aspect that I think is really interesting in Web 3.0, which is around DAOs. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
Good job.
Okay, so the way that a DAO works is it's basically you start basically an organization, you decide the rules of that organization, but you decide those rules in code, and you're able to do all these interesting things with them. And so stepping away from that, what we heard when we were talking to our customers, we found out we had groups of like 2,000 customers, 3,000 customers who had all joined us together, right? Because they wanted to, as maybe part of a church group or a community development organization, because what they would do is they would essentially create a lottery system, right? So they would each put in whatever, $20, $100, and then every month someone's name would get picked and they receive all of the money from that organization, right? That's something that's existed for a long time. It's really popular in Africa as well and in a lot of different countries, right? I see a lot of heads nodding, they're familiar with that concept. That is a perfect use case for a DAO, right? So the idea is you guys all get to see, you don't have to trust that people sent you the money and try to keep track of the records and everything like that, but instead you build it on blockchain, which you remember, again, is just a decentralized record-keeping system, which means that nobody can just run away with the money. You don't send, right now, what the communities are doing is everybody sends the money they use the OneUnited accounts and they all send the money to one person and they hope that person doesn't run away. You give it to the pastor, whoever it might be, right? Instead, you put it into the centralized organization that everybody governs, right? So it's democratically governed and the majority have to vote on where the money gets distributed to. So we found this use case happening in our community. In our customers, we had no idea that they were using it this way, that there were such large groups of people using it. But what we're working on now is to develop a system for these people on blockchain to be doing exactly what they're doing, but with a bit less trust that's required to do to use the system and a bit less record keeping work, which is
Okay, so I want to ask the audience, how many of you all know what services are you being trained for? So when it comes to the airplanes, hotels, restaurants, safety, construction, most of them are being trained in VR. A lot of the companies are advanced, like Hilton's been doing it for 6 years. Yes. Also, I did some research. The doctors that are doing the surgery, like friends have surgeries, and most of the doctors go into use VR technology, and et cetera. So a lot of things that we rely on being trained now. So a lot of our faith is already put in the hands of Web3. So that's something that we should be thinking about, and that means that we're 6 years behind a lot of this stuff. Actually, 8 to 10 years behind. So I looked at a video last night on YouTube in China. They were building roller coasters in the metaverse 5 years ago. So we have to desperately catch up. So that's my last question as I get ready to close. What are some ways that you feel that we can kind of push forward and get ahead of the curve, any capacity in this space, from education, blockchain, Web3, being banked, being able to go from your bank, I love the app, go from the bank to the Bitcoin. If you go to the Cash App app, you can actually buy $1 Bitcoin right now if you wanted to test it out. Cash App, you slide it to the left, you buy your Bitcoin and it stays there, and you can transfer it back to your main wallet. So there are ways already built into your phones you can buy this stuff. Yeah.
I would say just, again, knowing where we are, Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, it's like, how did we get here? I was at 1 again with the tubes in the ocean, and now we're at 3. But I think just being on the cusp of it and knowing the potential. I mean, like the way I think about it, the web that we operate in now, we are the commodity, we are the product, right? You are not the person that holds your data. You are a profile, and you are being sold to, or information about you or who you are is the commodity. Like you, and that's why it is what it is. But when we're talking about the potential of Web3, it's you own all of your data. And like, that's just part of what we're talking about here with the metaverse and the future and our digital identities and all of those sorts of things. Like you are the person that holds all those things. So if you're going to register for a service, imagine you have a backpack and somebody doesn't need all of the stuff that's in your backpack. They don't need you to pull everything out your purse. In order for them to give you the service they need, all they need is a pen, or all they need is your mirror, or all they need is, they don't need every single of it. So being able to protect our identities and no longer be the product, but to be the folks that are actually back, the web is back in the hands of the people. I think realizing the potential there and latching on to that, because right now, as Cleve mentioned very astutely earlier, we've gotten into a system where the power is in the hands of very few. It may look like a big open wide web internet, but it's not. It's a couple of service providers that are on top of the internet, and they own and know literally everything about you. It's horrifying, it's frightening. What a terrible note for me to end on. But
it's reality check.
But the next wave, the future that we're building now for us and for those that come behind us is one that is, we are not the product. And so just knowing that and being ready for it, I think is the most important thing.
Thank you. Thanks.
Wonderful. So OneUnited, largest Black-owned bank in the country, and 20% of our customers identify as being self-employed. Often they're sole proprietors, but our community is just incredibly entrepreneurial and incredibly creative. But one challenge that I tend to see is that people love to create businesses that already exist. Right? There's how many Black-owned t-shirt brands do we really need? I mean, they're incredibly creative, they're cool t-shirts, but how many of those do we really need? Right? So what the option is here is to create entirely new businesses. You need to look at what are the problems that we're facing, and then look to blockchain to build the solution to that problem. Right? Take insurance. Insurance has existed for a long time, but now you can automate the whole insurance process, so you don't need to go and file a claim and then send in all these forms and information. But that process of, as soon as your flight is delayed, you have flight insurance. As soon as your flight is delayed, you automatically receive the funds. That can be built on blockchain, and you as an individual that now have the opportunity to compete with the largest insurance companies in the world because you're providing a better digital customer experience. So I would say this is a huge opportunity to build for our community who is already entrepreneurial, to look to build new business models, to change what's going on, to change the shape of business. So I think really encouraging people to engage in the space, to look at the breadth of the many use cases. They exist in every single industry, and look at what you can build that's new, and to be an early adopter is a really huge, you get first mover advantage, and that's a huge opportunity across our community. So the more that we can continue this conversation, the resources are all out there. They're all on the internet. You don't need, I did a master's degree in management information systems and digital innovation at the London School of Economics, and I didn't learn a single new thing about blockchain that I didn't relearn from the very first book that I read about blockchain. It was a simple, easy read. It was probably a 100-page book. So it's not, again, the stuff isn't too complicated, but really if we can channel our efforts away from the old existing forms of doing business and move into this new world and try to be early adopters into it. I think it's a really a wonderful opportunity for our community.
I love it. 3 things. I might remember the 4th one. Number 1, I'm going to put the onus on everyone here to learn something new every day. Be adamant about learning something new every day. You could do that by going to wearabletechventures.org, our new website. But we host virtual learning experiences. We did the largest wearable tech hackathon in July. What does that mean? It's like a sprint-like experience where you are exposed to trainings and meet people where you could create stuff that we could all use. Number 2, put the onus on our community when they're promoting tech products to make sure that we're developing them as well. Because it's time out for us to only be consumers. We need to make sure that we are also producing it as well as benefiting from it on the back end. Thing is get involved. We issued a challenge to the Baltimore Times, which is the nation's oldest Black family-owned newspaper in the country, to learn about wearable technology, Web3, NFTs, et cetera. And as a result, they adopted it and shared it with other independent Black newspapers around the country. And as a result of that, we're putting a push to say, media, you have a responsibility to not only highlight stories that they're good and we're very familiar with, from fashion to food, but we need more tech representation, more innovation representation in these stories that are going out. The 4th thing I'll just say, you could get my latest book, The Audacity to Ask, via NFT if you subscribe to my website. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you to the board, and thank you, Ron Busby, and everyone else. Thank you.
They're going to go out?
We have a Bitcoin booth at the conference.
Conversation. Thank you so much, Howard. All right. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we want to bring our final speaker. And introducing our final speaker is our president, Ron Busby Senior. Ron?
Thank you. Thank you. So before we introduce the man of the hour, Talisha, you still in here? Talisha? She just stepped up. The reason I wanted to give her a little shine is we started this 5 years ago. And it was always about policy, and it was never really about our corporate partners, even having panels. 5 years ago, she said, man, we can really monetize this. We got corporate partners that want to be here as well. And so, Talisha, I want to thank you for your business. And I want to thank our corporate partners. But obviously, this is about policy. It's about the folk on the Hill that represent our voices, our concerns. And so 2 weeks ago, literally the last couple of weeks, we said, man, we got to have some folk with some history, some folk with some knowledge, some folk that have been there, done that. Who better to be that person than our next speaker? Representative Emanuel Clever serves as the Missouri's 5th Congressional District Congressman. As a member of the House Financial Services, he also serves on the Housing, Community Development, and Finance. We've worked hand in hand to support issues of Black America and our business. Give him a hand for that. And he's championed other things on reference to procurement and Black business issues. When we talk about intentionality, transparency, and accountability, Representative Cleveland has always been those. Ask him to come and say a few words.
Thank you very much. I think I'm supposed to be 10 minutes, and so I'm going to try to honor that. It's good to be here. I think I'm digressing, but I think one of the things that Black America, and it is that the more we can empower Black chambers, the more we as a community, will be empowered. And so, what I have done in the last couple of years is when we passed all of the legislation trying to deal with preventing our economy from collapsing during COVID pandemic period, I used funds from COVID to provide the Hispanic Chamber a joint $1,000 filling out the papers for the PPP. I mean, if you are running Bank of America, you pick up the phone and say, well, fill out this, and we want this much money. But if you are Bo Willie, Bo Willie's barbershop, you know, you don't. I mean, Bo Willie, you're the head of HR, and janitorial services, and so we gave them funds so they could work with African Americans who were struggling, along with Latino businesses. And so in my earmark that I got this year, I got them $4 million to build or buy a joint Hispanic Black Chamber building in Kansas City, Missouri. So I only mention that because I think that that's one of the ways we can empower our communities. I mean, the stronger those chambers are, I think the stronger we are as a people. So I just need to say, because it might get somebody here to raise some questions in other communities around the country for that. But I think that right now, one of the top issues that we need to think about is the whole issue of this new economy that is surfacing. And this is an issue I'm not sure. Is this better? I think I can. In my real life, I'm a United Methodist pastor, so I think I'll just leave that alone. President Biden, Secretary Janet Yellen, and the Financial Services Committee, led by Congresswoman Maxine, we made a priority over the last 2 years the issues concerning diversity in just about every realm of financial life in this country. And I think we have to continue to make that an issue. And if we do not make it an issue at the highest levels of government, we can't expect anybody to do it elsewhere. We're the ones who passed the legislation, and so we've got to do it. So for the first time, we have a committee on diversity. Now, if Democrats don't win, I'm not trying to be political, but I'm just trying to be honest. If Democrats don't win, then our diversity committee, chaired by Joyce Beatty, goes away. Right now, we can hold them accountable because we're getting information all over the country. And we got to force people to, unfortunately, to do the right thing. And one of the things we need is for Congress to be constantly looking at issues of diversity. Now, right now, in the year 2022, an estimated 7.1 million households are unbanked. 7.1 million are unbanked. And of those households that are unbanked, they are, as you would probably imagine, disproportionately Black and brown. And my grandmother, who would be my maternal grandmother, would be 107 this year. was a perfect example. I grew up in Texas, and my grandmother would come visit us 122 miles away from Dallas, and she might be there Monday and Tuesday. If her water bill was due Wednesday, she would get in the car and drive 122 miles to pay her water bill. $122. Now, my grandmother has never, when she died at age 95, she had never written a check in her life. I'm gonna let them people get my paper money just because I put my name on some paper. But there are, keep in mind, there are reasons for a lot of the paranoia from Black people. But we are unbanked, and there are many disparities as a result of our lack of participation in financial services. On average, Black Americans have significantly more limited access to local banks and, of course, local capital. Right now, we are hopefully in the final legs of having a redesigned CRA because it has not been updated since 1995, and if we allow it to continue as it is, we're going to continue not to benefit from what was intended to help individuals in the urban core receive opportunities from banks that were fleeing the urban core. And so I think we have a buy-in from many of the financial services agencies like the Federal Reserve, OCC, FDIC. They realize that we have to make some changes. And one of the things we're pushing heavily on is making sure that there are more areas where banks can get their credit. That's what they want. And we don't care. Give them credit. We want them to do what they need to do. Give them whatever they need. They need to have the opportunity to get CRA credit. We want to give it to them, and that's one of the things we're doing right now. Surveys show that Black consumers are much more likely than white consumers to own cryptocurrency. Who would have thunk? Now, last year, a Pew Research survey of US consumers found that 18% of Black people had invested in and traded in cryptocurrency. 18% compared to, get this, 13% whites. Us. Now, it may be that Black people, like me, are interested in some kind of, continuation of wealth. We have been, in many ways, victimized because of the wealth gap. We have not been able to pass our wealth on to our children and to their progeny. When you look at what happens is that wealth is almost always inseparably connected to land. And in the Great Recession, and then again in the coronavirus shutdown period, there were a lot of losses, and those losses primarily impacted us, Black and brown people, and impacted us in our home ownership. And so I think that you're seeing this interest in cryptocurrency because I think that it is believed to be a way that you can transfer wealth to the next generation. The median Black household income is about 60% of whites, and theologically, I've used that term, for white people, I think you can say that, poverty is temporary. To Black people, it is eternal, eternity. So I think, you know, we have to get our people completely redesigned mentally. For example, you know, my grandpa used to preach on this all the time, but you know, people say that money, the Bible, they say the Bible says money is the root of all evil. Now, anybody here black who believes that, let me tell you, you know, first of all, the Bible says the love of money. But even if it said the love, that money is the root of all evil, that's wrong. Brokenness is the root of all evil. You find somebody that's broke, I'm gonna show you somebody that's evil. So, no. How many times have you seen a rich man? Don't get me started now. How many times have you seen rich people robbing 7-Eleven? Brokenness. And so this is being seen as an opportunity to you know go first in something that we're going to take the leadership in this whole new economy. And frankly, it's just the opposite of what I thought. I thought that that African Americans would be running from cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. I just thought, you know, that we were not going to go there, but we are. And in many ways, it's very healthy for us. However, you know, I want to say to you that a lot of this new financial technology is not operating with any kinds of congressional oversight. They're not regulated like other institutions that deal with money. And so, you know, as businessmen and women, I would just say to you that I think it is worth exploring, worth looking at, look deeply into it, but keep in mind that it's not like FDIC with a guarantee is $250,000 when you put it in the bank. That I spent some time in New York going to some of the these companies, and you know, I walked into one in New York. It's like on the 47th floor. The CEO was like 12. I don't want to mistreat, maybe 13, but you know, you have kids and they're running around with shorts on, and so I'm thinking, and y'all gonna get my money? No, buddy. And so I'm saying that to you, and as you move around, just keep in mind that that it's ultimately, I believe, and others as well on the Financial Services Committee, that we're going to have to put forth some regulations. And I think one side of the aisle is going to fight that because they don't want any regulations. But I think if we look back, I was in Congress when we had the 2008 economic collapse. It was one of the worst moments of my life publicly ever. To watch people lose their homes every day, thousands of people every day losing their homes, majority of whom were black and brown, because what we found out, they were targeted. We have evidence from hearings we conducted. They were intentionally gone after because they felt, those who were going after them felt that they had the least amount of knowledge about the system of finance, and they were right. And so they were losing their homes. The homes were securitized and sold in the markets, and we got hurt badly. We shouldn't get hurt in this system because I think there are people who are watching it. But it is also something I think that the black business community ought to start paying attention to, and it wouldn't even hurt if you had some kind of a committee that looked at that at all times and stayed in touch with some of us who deal with this on a daily basis. So I'm going to leave that with you. I appreciate you giving me time. I think I've used up some little time, but I'd like to go and never. This has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. We have to get beyond this. We should not be apologetic to anybody that we don't work in construction. Or we're not a yard woman. I mean, we don't need. I mean, that day is over. We don't. I mean, we don't need anybody apologizing for trying to get wealth. You know, this is a capitalistic society, and until that changes, if we're going to survive, we're going to have to develop the skill of dealing with finance. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so happy to see you here, and I'm so pleased that there is a national Black Chamber kind of helping to pave the way for the chambers around the country. The Black Chamber in Kansas City is in the same building that my office is in. And I think if they were here, they would tell you that we're trying to do everything we can do to make sure that they survive. Every time there's some money coming forth in Washington, one of the things I look for is how can I help the Black Chambers? And I intend to continue to do it, and I advise you to talk to your members of Congress. Don't tell them that Cleve said it, but you can tell them that you know, now's the time. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our USBC Policy Brunch, but we want to have Ron Busby come back. He's going to share a few words with us all. So if you could give us 2 to 3 minutes, we'll be right back. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that delay. Thanks everybody for coming this morning. I know this is the start of a great week, and there will be a lot of activities, but I appreciate you guys coming out this morning. Policy is what really changes our conversations, our communities, our businesses, and most importantly, our wealth. Because of conversations about blockchain and cryptocurrency, we have the opportunity to really be ahead of the game as opposed to where we have been historically always trying to figure out how to participate. So I thank Howard and his team for joining us this morning. I thank each one of you guys for being here with us, our corporate partners for your support. Make sure that we give them some love as well. And again, there's still some opportunity to network here. Our board members have a board meeting, and then we're going to see you guys next month at the MGM Grand for our Buy Black conference. Alicia, you still in the back? Great. Tell them the date and what they can expect to find at Buy Black conference.
Okay, support our afternoon, everyone.
Come on up, come on up, come on up. Well, yeah, come on down, I guess I should say. Alicia is part of a great team that we have now. For those businesses that have not gone to Buy Black, BYBLACK.us, it is a program that has been developed by a young group of entrepreneurs, great minds that are allowing us to be found. There were some things that were going on in conversations today. Hold on, I got to talk a little bit about it. So, no, because they were talking about blockchain, and I just heard them talking about, hey, you know, you can be on here and you can support other Black-owned businesses. Some of the things that they're talking about doing. One, first off, You don't just find Black-owned products in Black stores. That don't happen. We sell our products in Walmarts, Macy's, anywhere you find white products, you're gonna find Black products. But how many times have you gone in the store and don't know what's owned by Black folk versus what's owned by white folk? You go down a hair care line, all the boxes look like there's a beautiful Black woman with flowing hair on there. We don't know which ones are owned by Revlon or which ones are owned by Pookie Nil. Because of what's happening with Buy Black, you will be able to determine that before you ever step foot in the door. Second thing is now I can hold folk accountable. Hey, Walmart, you got 37 Black-owned products in there. Guess what? Target's got 57. Let me introduce you to these other 20 firms that you can now have in your store. Second thing, which I think is really important, access to capital, but more importantly, how do we buy and sell from each other? So you get on the Buy Black app, your business is there. But now I got to leave that app to go find you somewhere in Google to be able to support you, maybe. Some of the technology that's coming will allow you now to buy your products from Black-owned businesses right there on the Buy Black platform. It is evolving to where we are having our own ecosystem. So we don't need white folk. We really have the resources, the opportunities, and the businesses that are there. We just have to be more astute about the technology that we're building out so that we can really support each other in the future. I'm gonna let Alicia Gay take the rest of the time this morning and tell you about what you can expect and what's going on at Buy Black.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I am Alicia Gay. I am with the Buy Black team, and did some of our new upcoming priorities and initiatives that you all will see in 2023. But in essence, if this is your first time hearing about us, Buy Black, BYBLACK, we are a digital-centric, people-centric platform that really connects Black businesses to community, customers, and capital. And so we are a two-pronged platform. The first is our directory. We have over 27,000 businesses in our directory currently, and we are steadily growing. And we are about to celebrate our first 1,000 certified that can all be found. Thank you. That can all be found on Buy Black. And so every year we have our annual Buy Black conference. This year it will be taking place on October 19th through 21st at the MGM National Harbor. That's right outside of DC Oxon Hill. And it is a 3D super intensive, disruptive conference. Will we be bringing in some of our business owners, our sponsors to interact and learn from one another. We have everything from breakout sessions to main stage, heavy hit speakers, if you will. And you can find everything about our conference at BYBLACKcon.com. So I hope to see you soon. Please feel free to talk to me about getting your business listed on Buy Black. It is at no cost. And so would love to connect you with some additional resources to help your business grow farther. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Great afternoon. Go support a Black-owned business this week while you're here watching. Ladies and gentlemen,